Signed. Committee Room 21. 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 Signed. Committee Room 21, 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 signed. Committee Room 21. 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 Sound.
Okay. Members, I'd remind you to turn off your mobile phones. We do have quorum. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to advise those in the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and all devices are muted. It's not permitted to take photographs or record any of the meeting. Clerk, are there any apologies? No apologies, and we do have Tom Buchanan joining via Zoom. Any declarations of interest? I'd remind you that it's your responsibility to declare any interest in any of the items under discussion today. Okay, members, thank you. Agenda item 3 is Chairperson's business. Members are referred to page 7 of the pack on the online meeting at 10 a.m. on Friday the 16th between committee chairs and conveners to discuss inter-legislature engagement, which is going to be chaired by the Right Honourable Alistair Carmichael MP, Chair of the House of Commons Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee. Draft agenda will be sent by Tuesday the 13th of May, and prior to that we have the opportunity to propose items for discussion for the agenda. Myself and possibly the Vice Chair will attend the online meeting and a note will be issued by the EFRA committee staff. Are there any topics in particular you'd like to be added to the agenda, or are you content to feed those through to the clerk and myself? Okay, members, thank you. Item number 2, referred to page 4 of the table of papers to an invitation from the Farm Safety Partnership and the Northern Ireland Agri-Rural Health Forum to 2 events at the Balmoral Show. The first event on Thursday 15th of May at the NFU Mutual Ulster Farmers Union stand at quarter to 10 to quarter 11 will launch its new focus on respiratory health amongst farmers. Second event on the Friday the 16th of May between 4 o'clock and 5:15 at the members' enclosure, Presidential Suite, will feature 2 panel discussions highlighting cancer inequalities in rural areas and lung health. Members, have you any comments? Are you content to note and reply directly to the organisers? Thank you. Agenda item 4, refer members to pages 9 to 16 of the pack for the draft minutes dated 1st of May. Members, have you any comments? Or are you content with the minutes as drafted? And if you are, then I'll sign these and they'll be published on the website. Content? Okay. Sign these. Thank you. Okay, matters arising is agenda item 5, guys. I referred to a member from the Clerk to the Committee for Finance, pages 26 to 27 of the pack regarding the community asset transfer. Members, as you will recall at our meeting on 27th of March, we had a briefing from RAISE on the community asset transfer, and then wrote to the Committee for Finance asking has it undertaken any work regarding funding for the CAT or to developing a land fund. The Finance Committee then wrote to DOF in that regard. The Finance Committee have forwarded DOF's reply, which stated that 17 CAT transfers were completed from the 1st of November 2015 until the 12th of March 2025. A list of those third sector organisations specified or detailed in the response. DOF is not engaged in work specific to a land fund, but it has engaged with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government since the closure of applications to the Community Ownership Fund, known as COF, in December 2024. Which was to discuss how the fund might progress and look to a new delivery model for potential future COF. Have members any comments, or are you content to note? Content to note, thank you. Item number 2, members, I refer you to correspondence from the Department at pages 7 to 21 of table papers regarding the NIEA planning update, which is the draft step-by-step guidance. Members, as we know, NIEA are providing applicants and competent authorities with case-by-case and site-specific advice until a new ammonia strategy and updated standing advice is in place. The Minister had also asked his officials to develop a step-by-step guide for farmers on what is needed to apply for planning permission. We requested sight of this step-by-step guide. Members, the Department has now provided 3 separate guidance documents. First of those is a refreshed DAERA advice and guidance overview document. Second is an agricultural planning application environmental consideration step-by-step guide for applicants. And then thirdly, the order processing flowchart to accompany step-by-step guidance for applicants. The Department intends that the combination of these 3 documents will make it easier for users to navigate the DAERA website and reduce the chances of submitting incomplete or invalid applications. I know this was of particular interest to a number of members, but are members content to note, or are there any comments to make in regard to it? Content to note? Thank you, members. Item number 3, referred to correspondence from the Department at page 22 to 25 of the table papers regarding reciprocal international trade tariffs with the United States of America. Members, we discussed the potential impact of these tariffs at our meeting on the 3rd of April and asked the Department for an overview of the main details and impacts of the tariffs. Members, the response states that initially the baseline 10% tariff rate was imposed in the UK and a 20% tariff rate was imposed on the EU. However, a 90-day pause on the higher reciprocal tariffs was announced on the 9th of April, and instead a universal 10% tariff rate will be imposed for all countries except China. UK has published a 417-page list of products that could be subject to retaliatory tariffs. The EU has put on hold any announcements regarding imposing retaliatory tariffs in light of the 90-day pause. Members, for information, the US is the second largest export market for Northern Irish goods, and in 2024 we exported 1.7 billion in terms of value of goods to the US, which was 15% of our total goods exports, and imported £0.75 billion worth, which is 8% of our good imports. The largest export sectors were medicinal, pharmaceutical products, 460 million, machinery specialised for particular industries, 247 million, general industrial machinery and equipment and machine parts, 150 million. Beverages and tobacco were 90 million, and exports of food and live animals were 18 million. I did note that President Trump did announce on X last night, or during the night, that there is a big deal, as he would say, a big deal with the UK government being announced today. So obviously we will beat our breath and wait on that, but there will be impacts on that. Are members content to note, or any comments to make? Okay, thank you. Okay, agenda item 6 then is the Departmental oral evidence session on the revised Nutrients Action Programme. So thank you so much for bearing with us while we get through some of our committee business. So members, I refer you to pages 31 to 36 of the pack for correspondence from the Department regarding the NAP public consultation paper. A copy of the paper starts at page 37 of the pack. Members, I welcome the following DAERA officials to brief the committee on the outline of the proposals within the NAP, which opened for an 8-week public consultation on the 1st of May, and to answer any questions after the briefing. We have Fiona Dixon, Deputy Director of Natural Environment Policy Division, Brian Irvine, Head of Environmental Farming Branch, Mark Scott, Head of Sustainable Land Management Branch, and Rachel Cassidy, Principal Catchment Scientist. As Rachel said, Mark is from CAFRE and Rachel is from AFBI. So I'm just going to open the floor to you guys and invite you to give us your briefing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the introduction, the welcome, and we're also very grateful for the opportunity to come and provide you with an oral briefing on our recently launched proposals for a revised Nutrients Action Programme. The consultation opened last Thursday, the 1st of May, and is open for 8 weeks until the 26th of June. You've been provided with the consultation paper in your briefing pack, and at the same time as this consultation, we're also consulting on the Strategic Environmental Assessment Report and the Habitats Regulation Assessment Report and the other impact assessments. So comments are welcome on all of those documents and the responses back to us. The Nitrates Action Programme was introduced in 2007 and established a range of controls on livestock manures and chemical fertilisers. The key aim was to reduce and prevent water pollution from agricultural sources. The programme has been revised and reviewed in 2010, 2014 and 2019, and this is our 4th review of the effectiveness of the 2019 regulations, and it's now called the Nutrients Action Programme, not nitrates any longer. The review has highlighted to us that the existing Nutrients Action Programme needs strengthened, because we've seen water quality data and scientific evidence that shows us that phosphorus in water and ammonia emissions are still causing issues in the natural environment. So the development of the proposed measures in this NAP has been a complex and iterative process, also taking into consideration the outcome of the Strategic Environmental Assessment and the Habitats Regulatory Assessment. After the consultation closes on the 26th of June, we'll consider all the responses that we've received, and the draft regulations will then be finalised. These will require executive approval, and our aim is to introduce these next year in 2026. So the next part of our briefing, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Brian Irvine, and he is going to outline the main proposals and measures that are in the revised Nutrients Action Programme.
Thank you and good morning. Yes, the review has looked at our existing programme and looked at water quality data, and from that it's clear that there are two things evident. First of all, we need I suppose a renewed focus and emphasis on implementation of the existing measures, and as well then there are additional measures needed, particularly in relation to phosphorus. There are other measures in relation to ammonia and low emission splitting and protected urea fertiliser, and those would be the three main elements to it. Let's improve implementation of the existing measures and these new measures, primarily around phosphorus, but also on ammonia, because those are where the biggest impacts, those issues, phosphorus and ammonia. There as well are a number of changes and updating and adjustments to existing measures to actually help provide clarity and get improve implementation at farm level. In terms of as well, we link into a number of measures that are already in the Lough Neagh Action Plan that are been delivered through NAP. So there's a clear join up and connection there. And as well, while we're focused on these are regulations, we have a programme of other things associated with NAP to help improve implementation, to help reduce nutrient surpluses, such as the Sustainable Use of Livestock Slurry Initiative. We've had, over the years of NAP, extensive Carefully KT and advisory support and online nutrient calculators and tools there for farmers. So we're looking at those again. There'll be some updates to those. And as well, once the next NAP, this proposed NAP for 26 to 2029 is agreed, then Carefully will be tailoring KT around that as well to provide guidance and help farmers implement it. With the proposals as well, as I said, better implementation at farm level is needed of existing measures, but we realise it's, nutrient management is complex, and there's various initiatives there, such as the Soil Nutrient Health Scheme, which will support it, as well as Sustainable Use of Livestock Slurry. But in going forward, we've been clear with stakeholders that this needs a collective joint effort across the board in the sector. It can't just be left to farmers in the department and Carefully. We need the support there of the supply side in terms of the feed industry and the fertiliser industry, and as well the processors. So it needs to be a collective effort to improve water quality, because as Fiona mentioned there, we've looked in detail at the water quality trends, and yes, phosphorus in particular has been a concern. And if we look back at the past sort of the 10-year period from 2012 to 2022, there's been a 55% increase in soluble active phosphorus levels in livers. Now that's turned slightly and it's starting to come down, but it's still a way too high from where we need to be in terms of improving water quality. And I suppose that key issue of phosphorus, that's all related to the phosphorus surplus in the agricultural sector in Northern Ireland. And that's, I suppose, the key thing is, if water quality is to be improved, that phosphorus surplus needs to come down, and there's various ways to do that, and hence there are measures in NAP and there's other supporting measures around that. So that is a key overview, I suppose, in terms of the need to reduce phosphorus. If we're very clear on the evidence that we have from catchment research that we've done, and I suppose moving on from the previous reviews that we've done, we're actually in a more informed position and clear picture from the water quality monitoring we have and the catchment science we have since the last review, and those links between phosphorus, the higher levels of phosphorus in soils, and where that level of phosphorus is above the agronomic optimum, and then how that gradually just dissolves out, gets into the water, and it ends up in the shocks, the drains, into the streams, and then ultimately into the lakes and into Lough Neagh is I suppose the key example that's there, and how those nutrient surpluses result in nutrients in water, and then that is what feeds algal blooms and things. So if it's to be, the key message is that surplus has to come down, and the surplus that is already there and inherently built up in the soils over many, many years, that needs to be addressed and tackled. Otherwise, the other measures won't be as effective. We have to deal with that source pressure. So that's an overview.
You content then, and we'll move to questions. Is that
yes,
okay?
Content with that. Thank you.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'll ask a couple of slightly shorter questions and then have a couple of longer ones. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. A couple of shorter ones. First thing that I noticed about it is that the consultation lasts for 8 weeks. Most standard consultations would last for around 12 weeks. Is there a reason why it's 8 weeks instead of 12?
That is I think the minimum amount of time that a consultation can go out for, and that is the length of time that we decided coming up to, I suppose, the summer recess period that was appropriate.
That occurred to me that you were coming up to the summer recess, but it also occurred to me that because it was coming up to the summer recess, that with officials taking summer holidays too, that maybe the resource may or may not be there, but I'm not sure what the benefit is of not running for a 12-week consultation as opposed to just... Because what I will say is that the response already within a week from stakeholders is significant.
Yeah. Well, I think to be able to consider responses over the summer period as well, we have thought very carefully about the timeline in terms of getting the regulations prepared and laid and ready for 2026. So by closing the consultation at the end of June, that will give us the summer months to be able to consider the responses and look at any revisions that we need to make to the Nutrients Action Programme, then to be ready to hit the ground running come the autumn sitting period for the Assembly to be able to bring the regulations forward.
And that's an important one then, because the next question was then, any change to the regulations and policy, will they require executive approval, or Assembly approval, or are they within the powers of the Minister?
The regulations are negative resolutions, so they're approval of the Minister, but there's a process there with the executive first as well.
Can you build out a wee bit further in terms of the process of the executive before that? So it's negative resolution, the Minister has the powers to adjust does he need a executive approval
This is regulations that would go before the executive for agreement before the actual SR and things would be taken forward.
Okay. Problem. So the consultation document highlights that Northern Ireland farming continues to be a predominantly grass-based system. However, on several of our committee visits, we've seen that there's a move towards developing multi-species swards. Would the wider adoption of these have an impact on the requirements, do you believe, for fertilisers and perhaps naturally decrease our phosphorus load?
Not directly. Our phosphorus load, if I explain it, the way the metric to measure phosphorus load in the agricultural system is what's called a balance. And that is looking at the inputs to the agricultural system less the outputs, and that calculation leaves you with a balance, and that's always in surplus. But the higher that surplus, then the greater the potential for loss of those nutrients to the environment. And the department, we calculate annual nutrient balances for phosphorus, but for nitrogen and potassium. And we have a long time series of data. So that gives us an indication of both the surpluses and the efficiency of use of those nutrients in agriculture. In terms of phosphorus, the inputs, and for nitrogen or potassium, the inputs to the agricultural system come from fertilisers, inorganic chemical fertilisers, and livestock feed. So it's feed and fertilisers are the inputs, and then the outputs are the production, the meat, the milk, eggs, crops, etc. So there's a big complex calculation done, and you end up with a balance. And we have a long time series and track that balance. So the actual outputs in terms of or the inputs to the system don't really relate to what the outputs are, now if you use multi-species sward and there's a greater use of that and a lower need for chemical fertilisers, well then yes, your inputs will up and your outputs. So that would help reduce a surplus, but as well it'll help. If you reduce a surplus, then you increase the nutrient efficiency of that nutrient. So yes, in terms of more efficient agricultural production and from the nutrients point of view, yes, the more that you can reduce inputs but maintain outputs, then the better you are. And the more efficient you're with nutrients, then the less potential there is for loss to the environment.
Thank you. That's okay, because the answer initially started out that that it wouldn't make a difference, but it could. In
terms of efficiency, yes.
Yeah,
and make a direct difference to the inputs, but in the longer term, if you get more efficient and you need less chemical fertiliser, yes, it will.
Bound to reduce the phosphorus load.
Yes, if you reduce the
use of fertiliser.
Yeah. Yes.
Through the use of multi-sward.
Yes. Now, if you want me to just follow on the phosphorus fertiliser, because I think this would be useful, looking at those inputs to the Northern Ireland agricultural system, the inputs are predominantly, in terms of phosphorus, when you do the numbers, the predominant input is feed, but also chemical fertilisers. And taking, for example, the 2023 figures, like the inputs to the Northern Ireland agricultural system are nearly 13,000 tonnes come in animal feed and about 2,500 tonnes in livestock feed. So your inputs are about 15,500 tonnes. The outputs are 8,300 tonnes. So that leaves a surplus of about 7,100 tonnes of phosphorus in the system across Northern Ireland, in the agricultural system. So the consequence of that surplus is that you get if you're bringing surplus phosphorus into the system every year, you get a build-up of phosphorus in soil, because if we follow predominantly the feed coming in and the livestock eat the feed, the livestock absorb a small proportion of the phosphorus, the rest goes into the manure goes onto land, and the land absorbs the phosphorus, and some phosphorus is lost to water. So historically, over the years in Northern Ireland, then we've got a build-up of soil P because we've been operating at a surplus. And now, approximately or slightly over 40% of agricultural land is above the agronomic optimum for phosphorus. That's beyond what's needed for optimum production. So the consequence is that high soil P just gradually dissolves out with rainfall. And therefore that gives you the background load of SRP, soluble reactive phosphorus in water. And that flows into the rivers and then ends up in the lakes. So there's a background load there from our inherently high soil phosphorus levels. Now, there are other sources of how you get phosphorus losses to water. Just after, if you get rainfall after freshly applied manures and fertilisers, you get point source losses if you've manure runoff from a farmyard or whatever. And when you get soil erosion, you get phosphorus losses on the soil particles. But one of the main pressures is that source pressure that's coming from our historic build-up of soil phosphorus. So that, I think, is something maybe Rachel will want to add, because Rachel's the expert in that, but we've very clear data and evidence, and more so, as you say, from our catchment monitoring and things. There's a lot of science around this in catchment science, and there are certain sub-catchments of Upper Bann that AFBI have continuous monitoring their water quality sampled on a 7-hourly basis, and some even on an hourly basis, and we've had that programme in place now for many years, and that's given us a great insight into the pathways and the losses and the sources. But I suppose the fundamental thing is we need to deal with that source pressure is one of the things, because unless we reduce that source pressure, then you're always going to get losses to water.
Yeah. Briefly? Yeah.
Well, I suppose Brian's covered that, but on the multi-species swards specifically, one of their bigger benefits is for nitrogen because of reduced nitrogen needs because of the inclusion of leguminous species within the swards. I suppose if they help contribute to improving the self-sufficiency within NI in growing the crops and forage we need for livestock, then it's beneficial. But any cereal crops or soy or bean, anything that can avoid us having to bring in grain and concentrate from external to Northern Ireland, if we can improve circularity within our system and grow more of it here, then anything that contributes to that, such as the MSS, would be beneficial.
Okay, I'm going to just, I have loads of questions, but I'm going to ask just one more if that's okay, because I know the members will really want to get into this. Can I just ask why has the existing NAP not been implemented properly or sufficiently? And if it was to be used in conjunction with the SOLS, the Soil Nutrient Health Scheme, and the Sustainable Catchment Programme, would it of itself meet the targets that are required or set out?
In terms of the existing NAP, no, it wouldn't, because what it doesn't have is those wider controls on the phosphorus inputs. And historically with the NAP, it had been developed and it
bear in mind, sorry,
yep.
that it said with, because
yep.
there has been no rollout of the SOLs or the real the soil, in conjunction with.
Well, if I could, I'll try and give you a quick answer where we've gone on this in terms of trying to address that phosphorus surplus. And basically, there's to get to a more sustainable position, not a completely sustainable position on water quality, but we need to take 3,000 or 4,000 tonnes of phosphorus out of the agricultural system a year. Now, in terms of the chemical P fertiliser, if you take that out, then that makes a big improvement in it and gets the surplus down. But then your other option is taking feed out or reducing feed, or the end of pipe solution, which is soils and processing at the end. Now, in 2023, chemical P fertiliser inputs were 2,500 tonnes. If you could just take 2,000 tonnes out, that's a big improvement in the surplus. But then what does it leave to be picked up if you want to go for the solution by soils and manure processing? 1,500 to 2,000 tonnes and thereabouts. Now, we've looked at this with AFBI. That is certainly challenging in terms of soils, but it's probably achievable over a longer term. And in short, we already have some manure processing, stream bioenergy for the poultry sector, the AD plant with nutrient removal outside Ballymena at Tully Quarry, and that's proved successful. But that's a big plant. That takes about 350 tonnes out of the system, just so it gives an idea of how much is needed. But in short, if you have, and there are plans for expansion of Tully, if you have more manure processing, you have the SULS model, really working and separating slurry on about 2,500 to 3,000 farms, cattle farms, and you have some processing for the pig sector as well. And then add in, because this is part of the SULS model, that it's all very well moving the phosphorus to the AD plants, but then you need to take it out at the AD plants. But then on those AD plants, and a proportion of those AD plants, if you have more advanced technology, centrifuge separators, then that will take out quite a bit as well, and then that enables the phosphorus to be taken out of the Northern Ireland agricultural system. So in short, with a lot of manure processing and a big reduction in chemical P fertiliser, yes, it's achievable, but it's a challenge.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I've been at a few AD plants and I've had some conversations where some of the technological advances so far perhaps haven't been allowed to be offset against some of the targets that were set in around 2021, particularly in the CCC. It's not necessary, but it's all tied, I suppose. It's still all on the table. But thank you very much. I'm not going to hog it. I think I've hogged it enough. The Deputy Chair, Declan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation as well. And I suppose, I think, Brian, you made the point, producing inputs while maintaining outputs, that's going to be the key here, I think, and working closely with the farming sector on this. And certainly since the consultation opened last week, I've been contacted by quite a number of farmers who are concerned about this, particularly in the dairy sector. One farmer in particular, he said to me that in terms of trying to meet the new proposed loads, that it would require him to either have 3 times more land or 3 times less dairy cattle. Now, if that was right across the board, that would have a big impact in terms of our milk and food production. So again, it's really important that we absolutely protect our waterways and our environment, and can we do that there whilst also not have a negative impact on our milk and food production?
Well, just in particular, as you highlight the dairy sector there, because that's in terms of where phosphorus surplus is in terms of many farms there where they're relying a lot on concentrate inputs, and those farms have high phosphorus surpluses, and then as a result there's a follow-on, usually it follows the high soil P as well. In terms of what options are available then to dairy farms, and we've modelled this and looked at 5 different systems of varying levels of intensity and concentrate input, and there's various mitigations or things to reduce the phosphorus surplus. First, stop using chemical P fertiliser, and many may not be using it, but modelling it and looking, there's these various options. There's increase feed efficiency by getting more milk from forage and therefore reduced concentrate per litre of milk produced. There is as well then the option of processing slurry as per the SULS model, and there's the option of exporting slurry to extensive farms, because that will reduce the P balance as well. And then the other option is to reduce stocking rate. Now that is, I suppose, a last resort, because you would exhaust all the other ones first. But what that indicates that all but the highest input systems with those mitigations can, in theory, looking at the modelling and everything else done by the dairy experts, that you can meet that P balance limit, except for those highest input systems. They would have to export slurry to meet that. Processing the slurry in the SULS model just wouldn't be enough, because they have such a nutrient surplus to deal with in the first place. So essentially what that highlights is those very intensive systems have more nutrients than their land can take, and that's they're farming beyond their land base. So they're intensive like pig and poultry farms in that the nutrients the land doesn't have the capacity to take all the nutrients, and therefore to get into a balanced or sustainable situation there needs to be slurry processing. And hence all the work the department's putting into the SULS model. And there's other benefits from the SULS model in terms of better nutrient efficiency, but ease of spreading slurry, reduced problems with fibre in silage and more storage capacity. So there's a number of benefits there with it, but that's one of the challenges in harnessing technology and other solutions in the way forward. Yeah.
Another thing is, obviously, you can appreciate the concern within the sector, particularly with farmers who invested very, very heavily in their operations, and also and I suppose another aspect that has caused sort of concern is the proposal for increased inspections and penalties through a fisheries bill. Now, farmers are fairly heavily inspected and at present, so this has also caused a bit of concern in the sector as well. Something perhaps a bit, maybe it's something you might want to address. And I'll just roll in a second one instead of going for a third question. The other thing was, like, in the part of the world where I'm from, it's hill farming. It's small, severely deprived SDA land, and the use of lessee equipment is not very adaptable for those types of farms. And I see that the proposal is to make this mandatory. That would definitely have a disproportionate impact on those small hill farms, and in turn a knock-on impact for the beef sector. So there's 2 questions in that follow-up, and that'll be me.
Well, can I deal with the inspection and enforcement bit first? Look, NAP is based on good agricultural practice and efficient use of nutrients. And yes, there's regulation there, but regulation and enforcement is the last place we want to go. We want farmers to be following this because it's actually efficient and good agricultural practice, and therefore by using nutrients efficiently then there's less loss to the environment. We want people to be doing it because it's the right thing to do, rather than that you have to do it because it's enforced. But there is an element there that you need, I suppose, the backup for people who maybe don't get the message or aren't willing or whatever to follow it. And I would have to be clear that, you know, we've identified in our analysis and review that one of the issues is, you know, lack of implementation, and that is because some people may have taken the opinion that, well, I don't need to be overly worried about NAP because my chances of getting inspected are low. Now, that's the exception, because the vast majority of people are doing their level best with it. But with water, it only takes somebody to be doing something wrong, and it runs the whole way down the catchment, and it affects everything. So the good work of the vast majority can be undone by either unintentional behaviour that causes something, or intentional of a way of thinking, yeah, it's good to get around the rules, but actually that doesn't do anybody any favours. So, you know, it as I said, it's back to the collective effort as well. Everybody needs to put their shoulder to the wheel, because at the end of the day, farming and agriculture, as well as the rest of us, we all depend on good water quality.
I'll maybe just address that second point you raised there. Look, we recognise that the introduction of lessee to those sort of smaller and particularly hill farms is challenging, and that's why we're proposing this sort of step-by-step approach. But what I would say is that you know, we've heard that issue raised, and if that is something that wants to be fed back through the consultation process, I mean, please encourage anybody who's concerned about that to do that.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and echo that Declan's point. It's been raised with me, particularly in around the ability for small farm operators to operate within the confines, and also the additional paperwork and bureaucracy that may be attached to it. Obviously, we're in the consultation stage. Michelle, you're next.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. And I suppose it is concerning, and I have listened to a number of folk who have contacted me with regards to this in particular. I suppose in recent times, and Brian, you've outlined it, the department has had an approach which has very much been sort of carrot and stick, and good progress, I think, has been made. But I suppose now we look at this, it looks like it's a stick and stick approach now overnight. And I suppose I would question whether or not this was drafted by the Minister's officials or by his buddies and Friends of the Earth, because the impact on across the sectors will be quite devastating. Declan has mentioned the dairy sector, but it'll also hit the egg sector, the small part-time farmer, and also the processing sector. And questions have also been raised about the numbers of livestock, and with various presentations that we received from the department, I have asked the question whether there is a view towards trying to reduce the number of livestock, and I've always received reassurance that it's not. But a policy such as this, I suppose, really could essentially be the end outcome. I am concerned about the combined impact of a number of the policies now that are coming through from the department. We have this, we also have the climate change targets, we have the new farm payment scheme, all of which are putting further pressure and bureaucracy on the sector. Has the department carried out a full economic assessment on this policy and what it will mean for the agriculture sector?
In terms of, yes, the impact and the measures and so on, I would say genuinely that in examining the issue and where we are with water quality and the nutrient surplus and how we deal with it, we've given it very careful consideration within the department and with AFBI and the science behind it. And what we're putting forward is our realistic, pragmatic proposal that we see as effective in dealing with the issue of the phosphorus surplus. And around that, in doing that, we're pulling in technology, we're trying to be pragmatic, we're working on SULs. There's £12 million been invested in SULs. There's over £40 million been invested in soil nutrient health for nutrient management planning, all these things to improve nutrient efficiency and try and reduce environmental impacts. In low emission, there's been grant aid, there's 11 million put into that. So all these things we're working on to try and get to efficiency and sustainability rather than reductions, and that's very much the what's within those proposals and the ancillary things around it, such as soil nutrient health. In terms of the impact assessment, looking at the impact of the low emission splitting, which is a big, I suppose, the main capital cost. Yes, that's significant capital cost. In terms of the first two tiers, the costs are estimated to be about 5 and a bit million for each of those first two tiers. And then when you move to the third tier that rolls it out, that's where the bigger costs are. There's 21 million associated with that in terms of capital. And then in terms of other capital expenditure, I'd mentioned about the separation at AD plants and things. There's capital estimated to be about 7 million there in terms of that to get the phosphorus pulled out of the system at the AD plants. So that's the sort of capital we're talking about. In terms of the low emission, those costings and things came from questions that were asked in the Farm Business Survey to determine farmers' intentions around low emission. Would they invest if they're required by legislation to split by low emission, or would they use contractors and things? So 60% of farmers say they would use contractors rather than invest in their own equipment. And then of the others, they were asked what their intentions were. So those figures are, I would say, as far as you can go in terms of impact assessments, are pretty accurate because we'd surveyed farmers' intentions and whether people would buy equipment or whether they would use contractors. So, as I say, the bigger costs come when you get down to that third tier because you're dealing with a bigger number of farmers. But it's yes, there is investment, but in terms of what's been invested in low emission already, there has been big investment because there's already requirements for low emission in NAP and larger farms. There's about 1,100 farms in that cohort already are required to use low emission, and all contractors are. But yes, so those are the costs. Those first two tiers, 11 million, and there's been 11 million of grant aid already supplied. So we're moving, the right way with low emission. Yeah.
Just to be clear on this, Brian, will there be a full economic impact assessment of the policy on farms?
Yeah, well, there is an initial impact assessment that's published with the consultation documents. Yep. And in terms of other impacts and things, some of those are very difficult to calculate at overall Northern Ireland level because the response to whatever requirements there are will vary per farm. And one farm will maybe adopt a totally different approach to another farm. In terms of the dairy sector, there has been modelling done by AFBI. They have a dairy systems model and looking at the impacts of some of those mitigation measures to reduce P-balance and things. But that gives a snapshot of what might be at individual farm level, but what all different farms do and how you aggregate that up isn't easy to assess.
Can I also ask, is there a potential for a longer lead-in time for implementation?
Well, it is a consultation. Those dates are proposed on what we see as achievable, possibly challenging, yes. And I suppose on the other, you look at it at the other side from the environmental point of view and the impacts that are already there in the environment. There would be the other view that, well, it's not quick enough, the environment can't wait, and the longer you leave things, then the more there is to pick up. The sooner you take action, then the quicker you get environmental improvement or less environmental damage.
Thank you. I'll follow up with
No problem. Just on the foot of Michelle's query there, one of the queries that's been raised with me and another impact for farmers is the requirement for all farmers to be using low impact slurry spreading equipment by 2030, which is only 4 years away. And with the reliance on contractors and the technical difficulties potentially with technology hasn't even got us to the point yet where it's easy to spread cow manure sometimes. The time pressures that are on here, is there going to be flexibility in that, do you think?
It's
With schemes that are already...
consultation. Yeah. What I would say about this, and I've been involved in low emission right from way back, longer than I'd care to say, 2009, when our first scheme to actually encourage uptake of low emission manure efficiency technology scheme, and that got it off to a good start. In several years we funded 320 of those systems, and they were the first lady to roll out here. But yes, supply and demand capacity is always a thing. But what I would say here is that we have a very good agricultural engineering sector in Northern Ireland who are good at making those. Now, for commercial sensitivities, I won't name some of the companies, but they're not just good at supplying Northern Ireland, but they supply many countries. And yes, there is good capacity here. Now, whether it's enough given what they might be doing for other markets, that always has been I suppose a question. But yeah, there are good capacity here, and businesses will step up to meet demand within constraints and labour and so on. But yeah, there's a productive sector here.
Okay.
What I would say as well, the Republic of Ireland have moved to low emission quicker than we have, and they have managed to get the machines. And that may be because some of the companies here are very busy building machines for farmers in the Republic of Ireland. But so it hasn't proved to be a big bottleneck down south. And certainly I would say when we did bring it in 2019, honestly, we did have a bottleneck. We did. There was a delay time, and we took account of that for people who were required to have their machine but didn't have it. But of course, we did have a thing called COVID in that period as well, which held things back. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. John.
Thank you. Chair, thank you, and I want to thank the officials for the presentation and the report. I think it's a report that confirms what we already knew, and we've seen the outcomes from the algal blooms and other environmental damage, and I'm reminded that, and I suppose I would like to seek some sort of agreement on this, but I'm reminded that we need to ask the question, really, isn't this a case of where action or lack of action will have consequences, and that sometimes in relation to the environment, action or lack of action can lead to very serious and very damaging consequences. So as to help build a picture of how we got to where we are, I want to draw the officials' attention, if I may, to a recommendation, or part of your recommendations on page 8 of your papers. I hope I've got that right, on page 50, for the benefit of colleagues on our report, where it's recommending that the online process for recording manure exports need to be enhanced and recorded, I quote, in real time or within days. Can I be told what the current process is for that and how long the reporting period is?
Yes, there's, I suppose, maybe to give a bit of context, the action programme sets a limit of 170 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year. If the farms are above that, one of the options is to meet that limit is to export manure to other farms. Purpose of the limit is to, I suppose, to prevent it being over-applied in certain areas, split it around, okay? And farms who are extensive and have headroom to import it, well, that's good because manure will save on chemical fertilisers, so it's good. So the whole process of moving manure about, the admin around it is that any manure exports, there's a form and there's details to be recorded and what farm it goes to and who moves it and everything else. But those are to be submitted online annually once a year by the 31st of January the following year. So it's not real time, and it's not, so there's delays, and it can be records are to be kept during the year and everything else, but it's an end of year. Those are submitted by a deadline then on an online system. So what we're proposing is it moves to more or less a real time, or within 4 days of the movement taking place, and that's to get it on time and accurate.
I welcome the proposal, but for clarification then, I'm being told that if such a movement of manure takes place today, it doesn't have to be, currently, it doesn't have to be recorded until the 31st of January 2026.
Well, it's supposed to be recorded on farm, but it doesn't have to be logged with the department,
Department.
until January the next year. Yep.
Okay, as I say, I'm building a picture of why these recommendations and proposals are required. Look, I'm going to put in record for me, for the committee. We live in a world where people frequently call for things to be better and different, but sometimes don't want things to change very much either, and that brings for some of us its own frustrations. I get the frustration of the public when they want something done about Lough Neagh and the environment, and they say the Minister or the Department must do something. I don't get it when political parties say it and then don't put forward specific proposals on the issues they're talking about. And on the subject of proposals and plans, can I ask, there is an existence, and some of it's been mentioned already today, the Soil Nutrient Health Scheme, for example. I'm going to refer also what's in the report to the Lough Neagh Action Plan. Can we be given any indication of how the analysis of the progress of this action plan will be worked in conjunction with progress, or analysed in conjunction with progress on the Lough Neagh Action Plan or any of the other plans, to ensure that we're reaching the right outcomes? I'm guessing that there will be cross-cutting responsibilities across different business areas of DAERA, so I'm keen to know how they will all be matched up as we go along.
Yeah, there's the Lough Neagh actions. There's obviously a number of actions in there that are relevant to the Nutrient Action Programme, and that ongoing monitoring of achievement of the achievement of Lough Neagh actions is a regular process. The development of the NAP is part of that. The consultation, we're proposing that there be a built-in review after 2 years of these NAP proposals. So NAP is reviewed every 4 years, but that there will be, after 2 years of implementation, a review of how well these actions are being implemented and working. The water quality, the scientific data that Brian and Rachel have both referred to is something that will help us analyse that, but even just things like in terms of the data and information that we get back from inspections to see how well following an inspection these regulations are being complied with on farm. So we are a joined up department. The working groups that we've established are right across. We've got agriculture, environment, science, all working together to try and monitor what is going on, not just with NAP, but with how that's impacting achievement of the actions in the Lough Neagh Action Plan. So, I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does in terms of bringing together, if you like, the different business areas.
And it is one of those. It is, and I fully recognise the challenges that this programme throw out to farmers, but there is a balance to be struck between environment and the farming industry and agriculture and the economic viability and also the sustainability of what practices are being put onto farm, and that's where we're trying to find that balance and walk that line.
Yeah, and on the business, finally, Nature, on the business of finding or striking that balance, look, that there are those who will try to work with aspects of the report and try and work with others in implementing it to do better for that balance with the environment. And there are others who will say, intensify as much as you like and to hell with the environment. We know that already, and in fairness, some of them don't hide it very much either. The working with the sector in relation to striking that balance, I'm assuming that's happening already. I mean, it's been mentioned here, I think, at least twice. That's bound to be happening already. I'm assuming there's been some discussions between your business area and the sector, and then of course other business areas of DAERA will be engaging with the sector on a probably almost daily basis. Can you confirm that?
Oh yes, I can confirm that. So we've had stakeholder engagement with regard to the NAP, the review that we undertook of the 2019 NAP. There were a couple of stakeholder meetings last year, and we've met with stakeholders twice regarding the consultation, and with a number of stakeholder engagement open to the public and anybody that wishes to come. We've got them planned for late May and early June. So this is challenging. I'm wondering as well. I might like to bring in Mark, who's come from Caffrey, because he is already looking ahead to what the engagement with the industry will look like once the NAP has been finalised, and the process of knowledge transfer and the support to the industry, not just financial support, but that support through advice and guidance and knowledge transfer. And if you're interested, I'll let Mark just run through the plan of engagement with the industry that we have going forward.
Yeah, okay. So you've heard briefing previously from Martin McHenry and Paul McHenry around the KT provision that Caffrey proposes within the Sustainable Agriculture Programme. But that's not confined just to the policies within the Sustainable Agriculture Programme. That's all DAERA policies. So we'll be there to walk the farmers through the implications of compliance and how they can best comply. So Caffrey's the KT channel for all DAERA policy. So what that looks like, we think at this stage for the Nutrients Action Programme, first of all, there's a comprehensive guidance booklet for NAP. Some of you will be familiar with that. So we'll work very closely with Brian's team and Rachel and her team to update that, to put that into, I suppose, a digestible format for farmers and for their agricultural consultants and advisors. At the same time, something that's in the new KT provision around supporting agri-professionals. So we're well aware that we can't send a Caffrey advisor up every lane, but there are industries out there who we can bring in who have hundreds or multiples of hundreds of clients that Caffrey potentially can't engage with. So to get that continuity of messaging and the best practice, we'll train those people. They'll then carry the messages of the department and of Caffrey and our KT up those farm lanes and help those farmers to better comply with these proposals as and when they come into regulation. So Fiona had talked about wider events in terms of the consultation. But once this comes in, the regulation comes in whatever format it is, and bearing in mind we are still in consultation, whenever that comes into regulation, then Caffrey will lead on awareness events where we will invite the farming public in to talk them through the main aspects of how they can help with compliance with the Nutrients Action Programme. Whenever you get down into a bit more detail, Caffrey's main, I suppose, input with our own technical agricultural staff, our advisors and our technologists, that we will work with groups. So farmers will be invited into groups. Business sustainability groups are currently open for applications, and then moving into themed groups. Those business sustainability groups will cover a wide range of topics, including those key policy priorities of the department, NAP being one of those. And those business sustainability groups are targeted towards the environmental and financial sustainability of those larger farmers. So they're getting, the people who are impacted most significantly are getting the closest work from a Caffrey perspective. In terms of themed groups then, we would propose that we would launch particular themes where farmers could apply to come into a group looking at a specific topic. One of those will be water quality, and we plan and propose to run 2 water quality themed group pilots in 2 specific catchments in the current financial year to test what the curriculum might look like within those, how many times those farmers should come together, what topics we should cover within those, and a key part of that will be the legislative requirements within the NAP, and also voluntary measures that you can put in place, perhaps that are part funded through the New Farming with Nature scheme. All of those aspects and what each individual farm business can do to best comply with NAP and improve water quality. And I suppose then finally on the Caffrey farms, it's essential for any sort of knowledge transfer that we demonstrate the commercial achievability on the Dara farmed platform, the Caffrey farms, how we comply with the regulations, how we implement best practice through our own dairy centre, our own beef and sheep centres, to meet the needs of a regulation such as this, and demonstrate how farmers can then put those practices in place whenever they go home to their own farm. And of course, to get the broad message out there, we'll continually work through press articles, social media, and the Caffrey website to hit the mass audience. So that's the plan. That'll be tailored in the autumn time, or whenever we get the regulation is in its final format. We'll take a look at that and see what's the best course of action. But those are the tools that are available to us in terms of knowledge transfer.
Okay, Mark, thank you.
Thank you, John. Patsy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks very much for your briefing here this morning. And it has definitely raised some issues. Can I just ask, there's lots of stuff about advice, which is grand, that's good, and I'm no doubt that coming from Caffrey it'd be excellent advice and groups and all that, and I've no doubt for those participating in the groups that'll be good. Lots of information around manure processing and how we get to, the point is, how do we get to that model, Brian? And you referred to the government in the south. I've just been looking up here what the government in the south have been doing. You're probably more aware of it than I would be, and that's the incentivisation. There's a low emission slurry spreading equipment scheme providing a 40% grant up to €40,000 per holding. There's an on-farm capital investment scheme which with a 60% grant and a ceiling of €90,000 investment, and that's for, it says, to support technologies, equipment and buildings that enhance farm efficiencies and reduce environmental impact. Looking at this and looking at the document, and I understand all the reasons for doing it, and I know the department would want to be in a position of maybe a bit of the stick, but also some of the carrot. For someone who's looking at the business model of their own business and going and attending a group's grand, but they'll want to know, where does the rubber hit the road here, guys? At what point does there be support, incentivisation from the department to do those things, either the department itself or in conjunction with Department for the Economy? That's the bit for me that's missing.
Happy to answer. In terms of the capital support for low emission slurry splitting, that had been delivered under the Farm Business Improvement Scheme, and previously before that the MET scheme. The new capital support scheme for ongoing agricultural policy for the Sustainable Agricultural Programme is currently under development, but that is considering what's coming in that. Really, that's
okay.
And there's wording in the consultation document there, and it will be focused on technologies to reduce emissions and increase nutrient efficiencies. So that's.
And to get it absolutely clear, is that thinking taking the direction of financial support?
Well, that's the capital grant scheme that's been developed at the minute. Yes, to replace Farm Business Improvement Scheme. Yeah.
And now, and I want to take it a step further. Does that include the slurry disposal? Because we can talk about the slurry disposal, and we can talk about, and it's a problem. Like, I live right beside and represent the good part of the western shore of Lough Neagh, and I well appreciate what the problem is there. But in terms of solutions, groups is grand, talking about new practices is grand, but for people who are trying to make ends meet within their business, that support is vital as well. And so on-farm methodology to reduce it, what you put in the fields, that's one thing. What barriers or buffer zones you have, that's another thing, that's grand. But the disposal of the slurry in an economy which is heavily reliant on agri-food is a major issue, and we know that. So I'm just thinking of your average farm, my neighbours, indeed my family. Looking at that, where does that come in, that support element?
Okay, if you're happy, I've dealt with the low emission, which is the splitting what you have. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, we're talking about here about the manure processing and the models we're developing in Sulls.
Just to tie off that loose end, so the less stuff, are you saying that there will be support, proposal, no, it has to be signed off by the Minister and all that, I know that stuff. So are you saying that the current thinking at the department is that there should be support to facilitate that type of manure spreading?
It's under consideration.
The new Sustainable Farming Investment Scheme, which is replacing the previous Farm Business Investment Scheme, is currently being developed and it's being co-designed with stakeholders, and the details are being worked up at the moment with the consideration of what stakeholders are with their input. So it hasn't just been finalised. But the proposal at the moment is that it'll initially focus on support for the technology and equipment to help farm businesses deal with ammonia and ammonia emissions, carbon emissions, and nutrient losses. So that you could read into that's less equipment.
Ammonia and phosphates. What about
ammonia, carbon, and nutrient losses.
Right. Okay. So.
And then I'll let Brian deal with that
Thank you.
manure processing question.
So the manure processing, but well, that's what we're working on with Sulls. Okay. There's phase 2 in Sulls, and there's £12 million going into projects in Sulls at the minute. And one of those projects is already out in farms, separating slurry and taking the solids away to AD plants, and that is the model that's been developed. And I must say, Sulls is great because we're learning things from it. We're learning things from a practical point of view, and learning things where there might be delays, constraints, and roadblocks down the line, what needs to be worked on. So it's a process, and it's underway, but it's promising, and we know what amount of nutrient can be moved from a farm by separating. We know the benefits then that is given the farmer in terms of a better nutrient efficiency in what he is spreading, that is then easier to spread through low emission. And we know as well then that's getting better quality grass and silage. So there's a number of benefits, and it's freeing up a bit more storage capacity for farmers. So there's benefits to the farmer, and then of course there's the energy generation. And that's, I suppose, with the AD plants and a bigger picture.
Just you raised it, so it's kind of instant. Well, first of all, I presume that what your learning curve is, I know this isn't a new process and it has been evolved in other parts, particularly within the EU. So I would presume that there's tick-tacking with other people elsewhere in the EU to make sure that mistakes that could be made aren't being made. I presume that's the case?
Well, absolutely. But what I would say is the model we're following is something that we'd identified within the department and with AFBI, and looking at the most pragmatic way. There's different models in Europe, and most of it centres around just entire slurry going to these plants, while we're focusing on separating the slurry and taking out the phosphorus, because to leave the other nutrients behind that are needed. Because if you take those nutrients away, in our farms, in some of them, then they'd just be substituting chemical fertiliser. So there's subtleties, but it's adapted very much to our situation.
It hasn't been done anywhere else, is that what you're telling me?
Well, there is separation done, but look, I'll give you the position in Denmark. That the slurry just goes neat to an AD plant that's nearby, and then it comes back and they spread the digestate in the land, and they don't really separate nutrients.
Yes.
While we're looking at the AD process within that to separate the nutrients and take out the excess phosphorus, to get it out of the agricultural system here. In the Netherlands is different because the many dairy farmers are just far too much slurry, and the slurry goes and it never comes back. And actually what happens to the nutrients in the digestate, it can go miles away to other places. It can go to northern France, it can go to northern Germany and different things. So there's different models in the different countries, but just in terms of, you asked about cost, that, well, I don't want to predict future economics, but at the minute that separation and things isn't any cost to the farmers here in those Sulls models. In the Netherlands, for a dairy farmer, for each cubic metre or tonne of slurry, it's between 15 and 20 euros to take it away. That's the cost for every tonne of slurry. Farmer has to pay 15 euros minimum for it to go away. If it's pig slurry, the cost's even higher. So that's...
Did you mind if I come in on this one just before we finish it out?
Sure.
There's an opportunity, but it's not joined up. It's the cross-executive approach to biomethane. I think perhaps that DAERA and ERA are probably much more advanced than the Department of Economy, who have the responsibility for the energy piece. But I think through some assembly questions, it's been identified that the Department of Economy only have maybe one full-time equivalent, maybe working in that space. And so the piece that I'm interested in is what is the ambition for the removal of phosphorus in this way and other chemicals that we're trying to get rid of in terms of that biomethane opportunity?
Well, absolutely, and that, Chair, is part of the full picture, and we're working away at the farm level stuff with SULS, and it says it's learning good things, and it's making good progress. But there's the issue then with getting the capacity and the plants and everything else. Now, there's a great opportunity with SULS that existing plants will take the solids and use that instead of putting in silage, and that has benefits. But there's a bigger picture of expansion and more biomethane, and that's a bigger picture for Northern Ireland, and that's DFE. But look, DFE are fully aware of SULS and involved in the management of it, and there's an interdepartmental biomethane group. But I wouldn't paint the picture that, everything's solved in the biomethane point of view, but what we're working on is a process that will supply feedstock, and as well it will reduce the nutrient surplus.
Grant Chair, I had only one very brief question, because you drew it to my attention as well, and that's the participation of farmers in this SULS scheme. How many actually are involved in it? How many farms, that is?
At the minute, I couldn't give you exact numbers because there's one project that is out separating on farms. The second project is not far away from having a mobile separator out in farms.
Well, sure, you can look into it and come back to us. That'd be grand. Thank you.
Yeah, so, but there's basically in SULS, there's one project in phase 2 is working with I wouldn't give you the exact number, but certainly 20 farms at least. And then the other project is getting started. And then there's a third project will come online it'll be next year before it's going. And
they're all dairy beef, are they?
Yes, largely dairy farms are intensive beef. Yeah.
Right. If you want to follow up with further information about that, it'd be very helpful. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. Aoife.
Yes, thank you. And look, I don't want to repeat any questions, or I certainly won't try to repeat any questions that have already been asked. But I think we can't, I suppose, shine a light on the importance of the impact that may happen here for small farmers. For farmers. So, look, we all agree that keeping our waterways in a good and healthy way is very important, and we see that in particularly around the topic of Lough Neagh. But the Minister, and I certainly asked the question the last time he was in here, talks about just transition. Would you agree that it appears contradictory given the huge impact that these policies may have on farmers and their livelihood?
Well, in terms of the impact here, if we drill down to our proposals and you look at where is the cost and where is the impact, and the two key things are the low emission in terms of cost splitting, and then the phosphorus balance and those phosphorus measures. Now, those are focused on, in terms of, now forgive me on the low emission, I'm talking about the first tier, okay, and we'll come back to that. But if you look at the phosphorus balance and the first tier of the low emission, that's farms that have a manure nitrogen production annually of 150 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year or above. So that's 3,500 farms. That's the most intensively stocked 3,500 farms. Okay, so those are the bigger farms that have having the bigger nutrient loadings and likely the bigger nutrient surpluses. So it's proportionate in focusing on those farms rather than, so that's 3,500 farms. Well, there's another 22,000 farms that aren't in that. Now, that's dealing with the phosphorus balance and issue. Now, when you bring in further down in those other tiers for the low emission, yes, it does bring in more farms. But in terms of where we're trying to focus on there, and there's that threshold, that's when you're above that threshold, then low emission applies, phosphorus balance applies, and for the grassland farms, there's a proposal for a liming programme as well. So it's focusing it on where the biggest impacts and the biggest benefits from implementation will come, really. Yeah.
Okay, and just with the changes that are proposed, and I know that we have talked about supports in place and about liaising with agencies. I'd be interested to know what those agencies are. And there's been a lot of talk about support groups and all of those things. What we need to know is about capital support, and I know there's been some discussion, so I wouldn't mind you delving a wee bit more into that. And certainly then in terms of machinery, in my area of South Armagh, the machinery is not suitable for those smaller farms. So what do you propose? How do we ensure that they get the same treatment as farms that maybe these machines are suitable for?
In terms of the capital support, as Fiona outlined there, the new capital support scheme under Sustainable Agricultural Programme is under development, and it is taking account of it'll focus on measures around nutrient efficiency and reducing emissions. Yeah. In terms of, yes, the practicalities of low emission for smaller farms, yep, it's a consultation, that's a proposal, and whether in the longer term there'll be technology developments that will make something that'll come along that will make it easier for smaller farms to use low emission, can't be certain. But yes, we accept there are practical issues to be overcome for small farms.
It's just we're not evading the question about the capital support that's available. That scheme is still being worked up, and we don't have those details. They haven't been worked up yet. But I think the important thing that I said earlier is that it's being co-designed with stakeholders who are familiar with the agriculture industry and the impact that this will have. And we're talking to our colleagues who are working up that scheme so that they are aware of the measures that we're proposing in the Nutrient Action Programme, so that they're aware of what funding and what other capital support may be needed to help support that. But we don't have the detail of what that capital support will look like just yet.
Okay, I think that would be interesting when we do see that coming back, because I don't think we cannot take away the importance here. Like, knowledge is fine, is key, but it's people's livelihoods here, and capital support has to be in place. Because more and more farmers are coming to speak to me about it. I'm very, very worried. So I will be interested to see that coming back. And just in terms of the machinery that is unsuitable, that may happen in the future, very uncertain. It is something that absolutely needs to be focused on. And all too often we see these small farmers, certainly from I can see the outworkings of the fears that the farmers have and the frustrations that they have. We never have any answer. It feels like we're hitting our head of a brick wall whenever we keep asking those questions, and we're getting very little back. Yeah. But look, thank you very much.
And please encourage anybody who needs to feed that back through the consultation to do that. We are aware that is an issue, and would be interested to hear if anybody has other proposals or options or ways in which that could be overcome. We'd be really interested to hear that being fed back through the consultation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally is William, I think. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. I've been asked a couple of questions. I'll ask them individually. In relation to derogation, so many farms in Northern Ireland receive derogation.
Currently, 420 are operating under the derogation, and that represents about 4% of the land area in total. Yeah. And those would be predominantly dairy farms. Yeah.
Yes, it represents a much higher level of dairy farms than total farms.
Oh yes. Yes. Nearly all those 420 farms would be dairy farms, yeah.
Is your new eligibility criteria making it much more difficult for them to receive a derogation?
No, I wouldn't. We're not making any major changes to the derogation, yeah.
You're amending the derogation?
Yeah.
Amending the eligibility, yeah.
No, in terms of the 80% grassland and things, all those things are standard. We're not really proposing many changes, but there will be, as a result of the requirements around the habitats regulations, there will be a screening process, and derogation applications will need some sort of form of assessment. Yeah, but in terms,
it's going to make it much more difficult for those.
For some, it may do. Is the straight answer? For some, it may. For others, it may not. Yeah.
Is it not almost inevitable that some of these farms will have to reduce livestock as a result of the new criteria?
Can't say for certain, but what is a requirement is that, and it comes out of the habitats regulations assessment, that there will need to be an assessment process for those. We haven't done that before with derogation farms, so the outworkings of it cannot be certain. Yeah.
Okay. In relation to processing of slurry, you would accept it's okay in theory, but the capacity is not there to deal with. Most ID plants are at capacity as it is, so the ID plants are not in place to deal with that.
Yes, and that's a fair point. As I said, it leads into the whole biomethane, and there is certainly a desire and a push to get more biomethane capacity. However, one of the things that's coming out with solids, of course, is that the separated solids in the material it's not a direct substitute for glass silage that goes into AD plants, but it is lower gas yield and so on. But in economic terms, it's a reasonable substitute. So there's an opportunity there that for all this separated slurry, we don't need to build extra capacity for AD plants. There's an opportunity there to substitute for the silages and things that are going into the AD plants. So there's two issues, but yes, fully accept if you get to the level of processing we're talking about, there needs to be more AD capacity, but there's a substitution element there in existing plants.
In relation to separators, they're quite expensive, so there's a big investment for on-farm separators too.
Yeah, well, here's a SULS model though. It's not a separator on farm, it's a mobile separator that will come out to the farm. So the farm doesn't have the capital investment cost. The capital investment cost is with the SULS operator. And there's already, one SULS project with a separator out working on farms, and there's another is going to be commissioned very shortly. So the farmer won't have to invest in the separator. This is a service that's provided. Yeah.
That would be useful. In relation, and it's already been mentioned by a number, in relation to low emission slurry spreading, and it's all very fine, but for the smaller farmer, it's going to be very difficult. Even with granting it, it's still a huge expense for a farmer with 20 or 30 animals. Contractors don't want to go to that small farm, it's wasting their time and their eyes. So there is going to be difficulties in relation to that. I think there needs to be something put in place to make it very attractive to those smaller farms, because it's a huge investment for those small. Even with the 40% grant, it's still a huge investment. So you would accept that, I'm sure.
Absolutely. There'd be some farms that it's just not economic for them to invest, given the capital cost of the equipment, and therefore they would have to rely on a contractor really or other means. Yeah. One thing that we did with the MET scheme way back, and it's not a current thing, but was we had what was called collective applications, so that machinery could be shared. So maybe that's an avenue you can be going down in future with it, to overcome that barrier there of the extra cost. But that's the only. I accept your point.
That can be quite difficult too.
Yeah, indeed. But yes, look, we acknowledge that low emission, and when you get down to those smaller farms, there are issues with it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, William. Aoife, and I'm going to be we're pushed for time, guys, now, so if you could be pretty succinct, I'd be really appreciated. Sorry, Aoife, for that.
Anya.
Aoife, Anya, sorry, Anya.
Thank you, Brian. Just quickly, and I'm going to go back to the rural needs impact assessment on the stakeholder group itself. When last did the stakeholder group actually meet, and what, I suppose, was the crux of the concerns raised at that last meeting?
Okay, the stakeholder group, we have an established key stakeholder group for NAP that meets every time we have a review. We met in June last year. where we presented the details of the implementation report. That's a detailed 4-year report on implementation of the NAP for 2020 to 2023, and we also outlined the review process. Then on the 18th of November we met again with the group to take them through where we'd got to with the review, and presented a lot of the research and science that were underpinning and are underpinning these proposals. We also outlined some of the measures that were already sort of, I suppose, the new measures that were determined are out there and published in terms of the low emission and ammonia strategy, and that tiered approach was presented in November. And then we met on Tuesday of this week, after the consultation was launched, to then take the stakeholder group through the main additional measures and so on that are proposed in the consultation, along with scientific presentations on various aspects. And we also had a presentation at that meeting on one of the SULS projects, as we did at the November meeting, to keep stakeholders updated on what's happening with the SULS programme.
And has there been any initial feedback to date on any of those engagements or presentations?
Oh yes, yep. I mean, we took questions and answers and had a Q&A session on Tuesday. But what we have as well for that key stakeholder group is we have 3 more theme meetings that we're going to get held over the next period of weeks to drill down into more detail into various aspects, and that's around the phosphorus balance measure, around the things around fertilisers and so on, and fertiliser and feed database, and around the focused approach and things in the habitats regulation. So we have more engagement with those stakeholders, as well as Fiona outlined the more general open meetings for farmers and public. Yep.
And they'll obviously be coming up in the next short period of time on the consultation.
Oh yes, within the next few weeks. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Brian. Just one final point, Chair, and I know it's been mentioned by other members in the room. I think capital support is going to hold the key to this, and it is mentioned in the RNIA around the fact that it is most likely going to have an impact on rural areas, but I suppose it's how the department takes mitigating measures as best possible. So thank you.
Apologies for mixing
You're all right.
On you, Aoife. And a very final short one, Patsy, if that's all right.
Absolutely, thank you. And I'm intrigued how a mobile separator would work, because the pressures on farm will almost be simultaneous in every farm to dispose of stuff. But anyway, maybe another conversation for another day. It's just the practicalities of that.
It's working okay, is what I would say. That's what we're finding from the first SULS project.
That's
absolutely.
For 20 farms. Replicate that right across all the farms across the north. That's my only query. I don't know how it works. Yeah. It's just posed a question in my mind.
Well, it's proven that it has worked well, and the feedback from the farmers actually in that project has been very positive. Yeah.
All I'm saying is the number of them that you would need, who administer, who operate, all that sort of thing, is that practicality. I can just, well, anyway. You get my point.
Thank you so much for giving us the time that you have. To remind members, this is at a consultation stage, so it's really important that we are involved in this, and stakeholders are reaching into us, and I'm sure they're reaching into you too. We will encourage them to respond to the consultation process, and look forward to meeting you again on the other side of that. And thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Okay, members, we're going to have a very targeted session now at agenda item 7, if that's okay. So it is the oral briefing from the Northern Ireland Sheep Scab group on pages 167 to 176 of the pack, and we're looking at correspondence from Mr. Paul Crawford of the Northern Ireland Sheep Scab group, including a report, a study of sheep scab in Northern Ireland, including detection and identifying barriers to control, which we considered our meeting on the 23rd of January. Starts at page 177 of the pack, a report titled Sheep Scab in Northern Ireland, an update and a path forward. Members, as you are aware, sheep scab is a notifiable disease which is widespread in Northern Ireland and continues to cause Northern Ireland sheep sector significant challenges, negatively impacting farmer and animal welfare. I am going to welcome Mr. Crawford to brief the committee. You take your time. Do you just sit down and listen? We've made you wait, so don't you worry. You get yourself comfortable there.
The problem was I didn't realise the seats twirled around and it just disappeared from behind.
The seats move, yeah, they do. We got the arms taken off them because they used to nip your fingers at the same time as swiveling around. Thank you for attending committee today. I'm sorry that we've maybe taken a little bit into the time, but I'm going to, once you're comfortable, I'm just going to invite you to brief the committee, if that's all right.
unusual, but people who like looking at things rather than listening.
You're no problem.
Focus on.
You've now turned into the beautiful assistant. Do you have?
I'm a beautiful assistant in the tea room with the roll. I'll do it, Michael.
You need someone tall for that, but that'd be no good to you.
It's okay there.
Brilliant. Okay.
I missed it. So
Good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Committee, for agreeing to listen again to the industry's concerns about sheep scab in Northern Ireland. It's been a few years since I spoke last, and at that stage it was in the previous mandate, so some of you may not have been here, and it was virtual, so it's nice to actually be able to attend in person this time around, and thank you for those that have engaged with the group over the intervening period. So as Robbie mentioned, the sheep scab is endemic across Northern Ireland, and it's causing a significant problem for farmers. Sheep scab, unlike some diseases, you can't totally deal with it just by yourself. You're reliant on a community approach, you're reliant on the behaviour of those around you, you're reliant on the observation skills of the inspectors in the marts to make sure visibly affected sheep aren't going through the markets. So unlike some diseases, it requires an element of coordination or work from the industry or some support to get good control. It was previously eradicated in GB, but never in Ireland, and was reintroduced to GB about 20 years after it was eradicated through sheep coming in from Ireland. So we know it can be done, it's been done in other countries. But it's difficult to do, and again, without a coordination, without some central grouping, pulling people together, organising, coordinating the treatment and the testing, it becomes very difficult. You end up chasing your tail if you try dealing with this problem individually. Pilot work in various areas of Scotland and England over the last number of years have really shown that over a short number of years, 2 or 3 years, you can make a good inroads into scab levels and get them really driven down, and then after that you can spend your time chasing the last few hotspots. And that's what they did when they got rid of it in the 50s. They chased it down, they beat the numbers down, then they went hard. And the reports talk about the chief vet of the UK at that time going to village halls up in Lancashire on the top of the moors, because that's where the problem was, and talking to small groups of farmers and trying to explain to them what's the problem. Part of the problem is those farmers in those areas where it's really endemic, where it's been there for generations of sheep, the sheep don't show the same signs as sheep that have never encountered it before. The sheep that have had it 2 or 3 times over their lifetime, they only get mildly itchy. They're not losing a whole lot of wool, they're not dying of it. But when those sheep move to a new area, or their offspring move to a new area and carry a few mites with them, then some weeks, some months later, all the sheep in those new areas that have never met scab before become really irritated, highly affected by it. It spreads through flocks like wildfire. These statistics would suggest that by the time you see the sheep starting to itch, probably about 2/3 of the flock have already got mites on them. So, looking at what's happened in other countries, looking at what they're doing in Wales, where there's been a national control and eradication programme running now, they're into the end of their 2nd year. The Assembly over there has put a significant amount of money into to dealing with the problem, because they recognise that it's a welfare problem. It's not just a welfare problem for the sheep, it's a welfare problem for the farmers. Across the late part of the spring, my phone was not, there wasn't a day through early March that my phone didn't ring with either a vet or a farmer wanting to talk to me about the problems they were having. I talked to farmers who have talked about struggling to get up in the morning and go in to the shed because they know how bad the sheep look, and they know they're struggling. They've done what they've been told to do, they've done what the advice that they've been given, but they can't get on top of the problem. And it really affects them emotionally, and certainly in some of the studies, some of the scientific research that we've done that's been peer reviewed, it's shown that if you've had scab in your flock, you don't want it back, and you know there's an emotional toil there. There's also a financial toil. up to £2,500 a flock it's costing to get this out of the flock. But if the whole area doesn't deal with the problem, if Robbie cleans his flock up and Declan doesn't, within months it'll move along, it'll come back, it'll get carried from one flock back to the other. And that's where you need coordination. It's where you need somebody to be there to go into those areas, to get the local farmers working together, talk to them about the problem, agree that they're going to treat on a certain date. The treatment provides a window of protection, so they don't all have to treat on the same day, but they have to treat within that same window, so that by the time William's got his sheep treated first, Declan's the last one to go, there's still plenty of protection on William's sheep, so the scab doesn't just keep going round and round the valley. And that's what's happening at the minute. It's going round and round the valley, it's going up and down the hills, and there's those people who genuinely don't realise that they have a problem. So that's where we want as an industry to go to where Wales are at the minute, with money coming from central funds, backed up by money coming from the farmers, to put people in place, to coordinate treatment, coordinate testing, and use the skills of the department that they have to do what they do best. They've got all the records, they know where the sheep are moving. Let us deal with the farmers, because farmers don't like, to be blunt about it, farmers don't like dealing with officials from DEFRA, and that's part of the problem. It's been recognised time and time again in the work we've done that that is a barrier. People are not reporting it. So when I ask DAERA how many outbreaks of scab there are, their computer says there's been 2-3 cases a year. That's because they're the only ones that have been reported and gone through the system, because farmers don't want to report it. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't want the stigma. But if you've got an industry group that can stand between the regulator and the farmers, as has been shown with other notifiable diseases, I picked the contagious equine metritis scheme because it's been quite a long-standing scheme in GB, and it's a notifiable disease. So there's precedent there that you don't have to keep running straight to the department and have the people coming with the dust coats and the clipboards. You can get industry to do what industry does best, to talk to the farmers, to get them working together, and then use the department to do what they do best, help us with the notifications, help us with tracking where the animals come from. If I buy sheep, and particularly if I buy them through a dealer, I don't know where they came from. I might know they came from Ballymena Mart. I certainly don't know where they went into Ballymena Mart. The department knows that. So if within weeks of them arriving on my farm they start itching, well, they didn't get it on my farm if they're itching already. So we need to go back through Ballymena Mart. What other sheep did my sheep come in contact with? Because if my sheep had it, the ones that came in contact with the mart might have it, so we need to check them. And we need to check the farm they came from. So the department has that information there, so they've got the skills in doing that. So let's work together, using the department to do what only the state can do, and what they do well, and leave us alone to do what farmers can do, and what the NSA can do, what the Farmers Union can do, when we pull together and get the sheep sector to work together to try and get better control of this. There's an environmental, I know we were talking about environmentally related issues prior to my joining you, and there are environmental impacts. Every treatment that we use for sheep scab has a negative environmental impact. If we can stop chasing it round and round in circles, so that we're not using as much stuff, there's not as much stuff going into the sheep. If there's not as much stuff going into the sheep, there's not as much stuff going into the environment. So we can win for the environment, we can win for the public as well. So that's a summary of where we are, and we're happy to take questions on any aspect of that, or the briefings that you received earlier.
Thank you so much. The members do have the papers there, and I know there's been a series of questions that members have put in. I had a meeting recently in my office, just as the agriculture spokesperson for my party, with the National Sheep Association, and this was absolutely on their agenda as a matter of priority. Before I ask a question, I genuinely need to compliment, just thank you for coming and dressed to impress for the committee, and you're the first witness to outdress the Minister for ERA, so well done.
It wasn't just to outdress the Minister. I wasn't just doing it to outdress the Minister. If anyone checks the record, I was wearing bow ties and sheep attire long before the Minister knew his way up the hill here. This was my wedding waistcoat. So
very good. Oh no.
I've worn bow ties, for forever and a day. So.
Excellent. Okay.
Very good.
So I'm interested in terms of the approach to the eradication. So you outlined that they had eradicated scab in GB at one point, and obviously it reappeared. Yep. Was that done solely through dipping?
Yes. At that stage there was only dip.
Okay.
Or slaughter. And there are times when slaughtering a flock or a group of sheep is the most appropriate way to remedy the situation. So maybe if lambs or ewes are close to finishing, close to being ready for slaughter, as long as they're only mildly affected, there's no impact on the quality of the meat or human health, and it's quick. It solves the welfare problem for the sheep. It removes those mites from circulation. It reduces the amount of treatments required. All the treatments after they're administered, like all medicines, have a withdrawal period before the meat can go into processing. And this is again where the environmental impact is. If the sheep are nearly ready to go and they get sheep scab and it starts to knock their condition, so they're just not in good enough condition to slaughter, and you treat them, you're probably looking at a couple of months then before the withdrawal period, longer for some of them are over 3 months, that animal is going to be standing around eating, producing carbon, producing methane, that it didn't need to, that if we could just get control of this disease.
Did the department at any stage here to Stormont have a scheme to support the eradication or treatment? And just my final one then is, what do you think the blockage to the department maybe rolling out some form of a scheme has been?
Historically, up to 1992, yes, there was a scheme in inverted commas, there was compulsory dipping. Had that ever been done correctly for 1 year, we wouldn't be sitting here, because scab would have gone. Apart from the fact we've got a land border that the scab mites don't recognise. I know some people don't recognise it, the scab mites certainly don't recognise it. So this will have to be an all-Ireland approach. We will have to eventually engage with our colleagues in the south, and there are people around the table who I know will have better contacts in the political side of the farming community down there than I have. But it would be great to get talking to individual farmers in the south. They have a problem too. They just haven't quite got to the point of, as an industry, coming together. So compulsory dipping didn't work in the past because some people don't do it right, and it'll never work again because some people won't do it right. We need to work out where the problem is and work with the farmers who have a genuine problem to deal with it, and leave all the other farmers, the other 98% who don't have a problem, not being forced to put chemicals all over their sheep and into the environment, which costs them money and costs them hassle for no real benefit for them. Because it only provides a short period window of protection. If it provided protection all year, yeah, you could see why it might work, but it only provides a short window of protection. So I have to dip historically I had to dip my sheep every year. There was no scab in my area. There is now.
Yeah. In terms of, has there been any quantification of anticipated cost or projections in that space?
Looking at what they're spending in Wales, and we could learn a lesson from Wales. Obviously, at the beginning of a disease eradication programme, there's more disease about than hopefully there is at the end. The Welsh went in and had an equal split across the first 3 or 4 years of their funding tranche that they got. And I can't remember the exact figure, so it was somewhere between £1 and £2 million a year. So I think we'd learn from that and probably ask that it was slightly front-loaded, so that if we set a budget of X for 3 years, that it would be slightly more than 1/3 of X in the first year, 1/3 in the second year, and slightly less in the third year, because we anticipate there'll be more work. Historically, before costs started rising during COVID, and when the last grant scheme came out from the department, and you could get £250,000 as a grant for a new milking parlour if you're a dairy farmer or something like that. That was a top end of the budgets. I always thought that if I had 3 milking parlours, I could make a good dent in sheep scab for a year. With costs having escalated a little bit, we're probably looking a little bit closer to £1 million a year for a number of years, and then tailing that off as we transition towards less disease.
There's a bit of an end game in sight.
Yeah.
Through it.
And also, I think there's opportunity during what we would be doing and collecting blood samples from lots of flocks around the country to augment or simply replace some of the money that department's already spending on disease surveillance and things like that. So we can look to offset some of that cost to get some things that are already ongoing as well. I
have a number of members who have want to ask questions. And what I'm going to suggest to members is it's 11:53. I want to take a brief break at 11:58:59 and then come straight back just after 12 o'clock, if that's okay. So Aoife, you'd indicated, and probably at that stage when Aoife is finished, if it's 11:58, I'm just going to ask just for a brief break, and then we'll come back in. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So, just being from a border county or a border community, what is the prevalence of sheep scab in the south, and how big of an impact does cross-border contamination have on attempts to curtail it?
Right. We don't have good figures for the north, and we certainly don't have good figures for the south as to much as there. I spoke at a meeting in Donegal a year and a half ago, just to talk about what we were doing in Northern Ireland, and I just asked people to stick up their hand if they'd seen Sheep Scab in their area recently, and there was one or two hands shot up, and then there was a bit of this going on. And by the time they all settled and stuck their hands up, there was a good couple of dozen hands. We know there's plenty. Anywhere there's a lot of sheep, there's going to be scab. It was on the front page of the Irish Farmers Journal at some point in the last 12 months about the problems they were having down in the Wicklow area and the Wicklow Hills with scab. So there are pockets of it, and there would be areas where there's not a low sheep population where there wouldn't be very much. But I think if you went looking for it in Donegal, Mayo, Kerry, Wicklow, you'll find it. And talking to farmers, it's there. Even Louth, the Cooley Hills, I've spoken to farmers from the Cooley area, and they've said, yeah, we've got a problem, but it's all, we've got a problem. I keep offering to go and speak. I don't even offer it. I don't even ask them for money at any of their meetings. But where we were as an industry prior to our open meeting in 2019, there was a lot of talk about scab as we went into meetings, as we came out of meetings, but never in the meetings. For 2 or 3 years before that, and then we started talking about it. As one of the quotes there, and one of the people have said, one of the big successes of the little bit of work that we've done over the last couple of years is that people are actually talking about scab. It's something that people just didn't talk about, but we're now actually talking about it, and people are prepared to phone me up and give me their name and say, I've got a problem, and they give me a decent explanation of what their problem is. We talked about not reporting things. I don't report everything I hear. I do report the ones I see in the market, because there are market inspectors, and I had a...
Okay, thank you. And just, you were saying that the dipping had stopped in 1992, and I was going to ask the question as to why, but obviously it's like it wasn't being effective in some cases, and the environmental impact.
Also the human health risks.
Yes.
I think the human health risk was probably a lawyer somewhere said, look guys, if you keep telling the farmers to use this nasty stuff, which is going to cause them harm, particularly if they use it badly, or if they're particularly sensitive, then somebody's going to send you a brown envelope wanting a big payout. I think that was part of certainly part of the thinking.
In your experience, or since 1992, when it has been stopped, is there anything, or do you feel there is anything that is as effective as dipping if it had to be done? Nothing. No. Okay.
There are injectable products there, but there's documented resistance, laboratory documented resistance in all corners of GB. I haven't been able to get enough mites off enough sheep and into the laboratory to prove it categorically, but I have been on farms. I 100% believe the farmers treated the sheep correctly, where I was still able to pick live mites off them. The interesting thing was there were dead mites on the same sheep at the same time as live mites, which really is suggestive that something killed some of them, but not all of them.
Okay, just lastly, what did they do in Britain to eradicate? You said that Britain had eradicated it. Yeah. What did they do to eradicate it?
Intensive dipping in
right.
in the areas where there was a problem and chasing it down. Now we have got blood tests that they didn't have access to. The dips that we have access to are better. In theory, we should find it easier, but we don't.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, members, we're just going to take a brief break. We're going to go back into session at around 12:05, if that's... and Paul, if you can stay with us. John will be up next, so thank you. Thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Okay, thank you. That's us back in session. Members, thank you. And John, you're up next.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Paul, thank you again for your presentation and coming back to see us here. Mindful of the three pillars that you have on review of the order, funding and also training. Keen to know on the training aspect of it all, is there any training currently underway or planned that you know of in the sector itself?
There's nothing specific of any substance that I'm aware of. I know that from time to time DERA officials do updates with market inspectors. Anytime I have a group of vets in the room, I'm quite often asked to give an update on what we've learnt and impart information that way. From time to time, training courses are run for farmers to obtain the necessary certificates for competency in dipping, but they are few in number compared to the number of farmers that want to undertake them.
Okay.
And that's mainly down to logistics. There are very few people in Northern Ireland with the appropriate ticket to undertake the assessments.
Yeah, but the question is, really, is the sector itself, the farming sector, doing any training separate to the department or anything it might do?
There's nothing that I'm currently aware of. So we've just come off the back of the one-year programme, and there's a lot of farmers' meetings as part of that. But there's nothing specific that we're set up at the minute. We're sort of just we've come off one programme. We're trying to get the next phase up and running. But yes, certainly when the Sheep Association have their regular meetings, we talk about sheep scab, and information is fed out in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. And Patsy.
Yeah, what I was just going to ask is a brief thing, and thank you for your presentation. I was just looking. I have an outfit like that at home too.
Monday, would you?
So, anyway, very good, but very topical. But what I was going to ask was, you mentioned there a revision of the sheep scab NI order, recognising new diagnostic testing options unavailable at the time of the last revision, as well as the emergence of resistance to injectable treatments over the period. Now, just I'm asking because the thing presents the question to me. Does that order define the diagnostic testing and define the treatments, or it's just that it poses, for me it would be maybe unusual for testing to be prescribed within an order, or treatments to be prescribed. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, and again, because when the order was written in the 50s and minimally updated since then, it just asks for a veterinary opinion on, and it's been subsequently proven that it's hard for a vet to be sure just looking at a sheep that they don't have sheep scab. It's also been proven that doing skin scrapes and not finding a sheep scab mite doesn't mean it's not there. There's a good blood test now, so there's these sort of things that we should be starting to think about. We look at other diseases that we now use blood tests. We use skin tests for TB. We don't just rely on whether the cow's coughing to try and catch the disease earlier rather than waiting for obvious signs.
But are those whatever the diagnostic testing options were previously, and that maybe
there was no specific tests.
But are you asking that those be specified within the order, new diagnostic testing? Or maybe I'm reading this wrong.
Oh no, these are issues for that we want to debate with the appropriate authorities, and we think that there's scope that the regulations, the order could be tightened a little bit so that there was more emphasis put on evidence rather than an opinion. And when it comes to treatment, that there should be more evidence put on the efficacy or the effectiveness of a treatment rather than whether just something has been administered. Because at the minute, I can administer a treatment, and as a vet I can sign off that a treatment has been administered, but we know there's a lot of resistance out there. So I could treat the sheep and it not work, but I would sign off that they've been treated, and that's enough to lift the restrictions and allow those sheep to go back into circulation.
But you're not asking for that to be specified within the order, the treatments, because it would have to be...
Not the individual treatments.
All right, okay, no. Just maybe I've read that wrong then. On that question then, should the vet, if they knew about the condition, should the vet not know themselves that the best thing we can do, that diagnostic test, and that's for yesteryear, that's a century out of date or whatever it might be, and that whatever medicines there are that they use, the most up-to-date stuff, should the vet not know that without revision of the order?
A vet may know various things, but it's not always easy to make a farmer choose a more difficult option to provide treatment rather than just using an injection which may or may not work. eventually when they get to me in March and they've tried 2 or 3 and their heads are turned, that they will go down the route of dipping, but
Aye. Oh, no, that's grand. I just want clarity around that particular paragraph. That's lovely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And
Thanks,
Michelle?
Chair.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I tabled a couple of questions to the Minister just in relation to sheep scab, sort of tail end of last year, and obviously you had referred the numbers and the fact that there were very small numbers that were being, I suppose, maybe declared to the department. But 2023, obviously, there was a considerable spike in that, and was that as a consequence of the project?
Yeah. All the farms that we encountered during the project were fully reported to the department. Off the back of that, there was probably 1 or 2 neighbours and other farms that weren't part of the project that got picked up at that time as well. So yeah, certainly the spike in numbers in that across 22-23 would have been almost solely down to the project, and some down to the awareness that the project raised, and making other people, either forcing other people's hands to come forward or encouraging people. Industry does struggle to understand why the numbers are so low that the department are picking up, considering we know as an industry that a lot of sheep are offloaded through the slaughterhouses, and there are officials. There's not a mart inspector in every mart every day, but there are officials in the slaughterhouses every day, and we don't understand why they're not seeing a little bit more, and those numbers aren't coming through, and historically certainly haven't been coming through.
In some way, I suppose that really required a health warning, that or certainly an explainer alongside the response to that answer, given the disparity between each of the years. The Sheep Task Force have suggested that a sheep scab programme should be included in any future sheep support scheme. Are you supportive of that?
Depends how they do it. Because sheep scab is not a disease that one can deal with individually, it won't work. You won't get the same bang for your buck if you give individual farmers an option to tick a box and dip their sheep and get an extra pound a head, or blood test their sheep and get an extra pound a head, if it's not done in a coordinated fashion. Because it doesn't matter what you do and how many times you treat your sheep. If Nick and William on either side of you have scab and don't do anything about it, we'll be giving you money, you'll be spending it, your sheep will still be bad in a year's time. So it can be part of an overall programme, but it can't just be part of it like they have in the south, where you have got the options and you pick 3 options and you get €2 for this and €1 for that and €4 for the other. It can be part of the overall budget, can be part of the overall package, but it needs to have that coordination effort. Otherwise it will not be good value for money for anyone, farmers, never mind industry.
Thank you. Thanks.
Point well made. William?
Just to say, if it was not a compulsory element to the programme, you would get careless farmers would never sort this out.
Yep.
So in my eyes, and I'm a farmer all my life, so I have a fair idea what happens.
We're dealing with it.
There'll be those that just are careless, and unless it's something compulsory, it won't work.
That's why I would not be in favour of going the route that England has, where they have they've taken scab off the notifiable diseases order or notifiable diseases list. I would want to keep it there, so that if we were doing something coordinated, and again we go back to Michelle and her sheep were a bit itchy, and we went out and visited her, and we started visiting the neighbours, and we found Nick had a problem as well, and Patsy had a problem, and they were all happy to engage. But you, William, you weren't answering the phone, you weren't answering the door when I called round, and you were disappearing up off the field in the quad bike every time I came down the lane. That's when we would use the scab order, and that's when we would use the department to do what the department's good at, and that's saying, look, the schemes tried to play softball with you, and they tried to play nice, but you're not engaging, so you're not moving anything until you either treat through the scab under the auspices of the scab order, or until Paul or whoever's running the scheme tells us that you're participating, in which case we'll then free you up and allow you to start trading again.
You need a stick.
Oh, you need a stick.
Yeah.
You need a carrot and a stick. And
Only a farmer can use those words. In
a bit of blue pipe, maybe.
A bit of blue pipe. Okay, thank you, members, and thank you, Paul, for your presentation. Members, I think, with your permission, if we can write to the department just to make them aware that we've had this session, and perhaps ask them, have they any further plans in this space, and also maybe to ask, have they been in touch with their Welsh counterparts to assess the FSA of what's going on there and see what our ambitions are. And Paul, thank you so much for your presentation and taking the questions from members today.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
You all have my details if you want to catch up on this or anything else. Down the line.
Thank you. In our packs.
Shout anytime.
Thank you. Okay, members. This next agenda item is agenda item 8, which is the agricultural bill. It's the formal clause by clause and draft report. Members, we have completed our deliberations on the bill, and today we will conduct the formal clause by clause process. This is a formal process of each clause being read out and the committee recording consensus or otherwise on each clause. But before we do that, we're going to move into closed session, literally for a very short few minutes, to take some information from the bill's officials. Thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Okay, members, just to reaffirm where we are, we're on Agenda Item 8, which is Agriculture Bill Formal Clause by Clause and Draft Report. Members, we have completed our deliberations on the bill, and today we will conduct the formal clause by clause process. This is a formal process of each clause being read out and the committee recording consensus or otherwise on each of the clause. We have had with us over each of our sessions from the department John Tarrington and Elaine McCrory, who are in the public gallery. Thank you for your attendance today again. So before we do move to the formal clause by clause deliberation, would any of the members like to seek any final points of clarification in regard to the witnesses today, our guests? John, could you just even take the seats for just a couple of minutes, and if there's any further clarification, then maybe we could make that. So John Blair has indicated that he would like some clarity around some of the points.
Thank you, and I want to thank the officials for coming along again today also. The one thing I wanted to seek a bit of a clarification on before the committee further progresses and finalises our response to the bill is that, given most of the discussion, dissension perhaps that there's been has been around Clause 1 of the bill. So if I could ask for, in as succinct a way as possible, if that can be done, could we be given examples of where the discretion mentioned in Clause 1 might actually be used, and that we frame this in a way that will sort of conclude the matter for myself and fellow committee members?
I'll maybe take that one, and then you come in. I'll start off anyway. If I could, I would take the committee back to what the bill actually says. So the main change in Clause 1 is to substitute a new paragraph which says, in a case where the relevant authority decides to grant financial assistance as mentioned, blah de blah. So it's a clause that enables us to make a decision on a case-by-case basis. And therefore, John, as you were saying, examples of where we might make such a decision not to grant assistance for an operational programme might be where, in doing so, we would bust the budget allocation that we had for the scheme, which may mean we would have to divert funds from other schemes. And the Minister may not want to do that, depending on his priorities. And secondly, where the money that would go for the benefit of non-Northern Ireland growers, so the executive earmarked funding, would be used for the benefit of people who are not growing the product in Northern Ireland. So I think those are two examples of where we may decide to exercise that discretion.
Okay.
If I could add, the first scenario of when the bank might get bust, or the term budget might get bust, might be because we get more POs and we have no control over that. It might be because POs get more members and we have no control over that. Or it might be that the POs themselves decide to do a lot more, spend a lot more of their money, and it might become unsustainable. The point is, it's on a case-by-case basis, as Ian said. It's not a closure as in any way. And if a legitimate operational programme came, the Minister would have to have a good case on a case-by-case to refuse that funding. And I think those examples that Elaine have given are clear and obvious and right and proper in terms of diligence.
I think, thank John and Elaine for that, and I think that's helpful. I think also we should reflect that none of this might happen at all, of course, but in the event that it did and a budget was depleted, then there might be need for some kind of readjustment. Refusal to accept is an option, but I assume also therein there would be the option of adjusting budgets that were remaining. So somebody might not get nothing. They might get less than they requested, but get something dependent on the remaining budget.
Yes. Yeah, that's a reasonable. The discretion might say,
it's not an all or nothing.
Come back with a different operational programme, please, because we can't
just
cover all
to
of
set
that.
the full context of that. I think that does help me. I think it helps me considerably. And also there seemed to be some uncertainty here over whether or not for a producer organisation to set up here, they would have to have all of their employees in Northern Ireland and their registered headquarters in Northern Ireland. My understanding was that both those criteria didn't apply. It was headquarters only. Can you clarify that?
No, it's where, so at the moment where the head office of a PO is located is generally determined where they derive the most of their marketing production, so where they derive their most turnover. So if you're deriving most of your turnover in England, your head office is in England. But by agreement it can be where the most of the members are located. So that could mean that you have a PO and most of its members are in Northern Ireland. Therefore, if, say it was English people and Northern Irish growers, we could say, by agreement between DERA and DEFRA, okay, most of the growers are located in Northern Ireland, therefore the head office can be here. But that requires DERA's agreement.
And the problem might be, in real terms, some of the bigger producers might be in England.
Yes.
And that's who would come with that. So you could see the minister or the, not agreeing to that transfer reasonably. If it impacted on the Northern Ireland budget by having to pay non-Northern Ireland beneficiaries, and potentially to a large scale if they are the bigger producers in England.
Okay, thank you. First.
And that works with the current scheme. That's the current situation.
That's the current rules.
The current rules, unadjusted scheme allows for that to happen. And one of the purposes of clause 1 is to close that door. Yep. And the metric that this is the bit that paints a better picture now. So the metric is not, so the first metric is the quantification of the production, but actually the other phase is then membership, and the membership could be numerous, but it could be small producers against a huge producer, and that's the sort of the angle that could be utilised. Thank you. Anya?
Yes, Chair. I've just briefly lost my train of thought there. I think it was around roughly the question that you've put there. So essentially speaking, it's up to the Minister. DERA and DEFRA still reserve the right to refuse a PO currently under the FEAS scheme and that same scheme that will continue into the next 3-year period.
So under the current rules, if the rules remain as they are, you would determine the head office where the majority of the value of market production is, so where the majority of the turnover is generated. But we can, say a PO said to us, we would like our head office to be in Northern Ireland. If most of their members are located here and DERA and DEFRA agree, then the head office can be in Northern Ireland. Our reservations would be around those POs who have most of their turnover generated in England, and most of their big players are in England, and the small growers are here. We, under the current rules, would be paying for a programme that would benefit the small growers that are here and the people who are located in Northern Ireland and England or Scotland.
I think it's worth adding that under the current rules, if it was a PO that set up that was just Northern Ireland growers, and that
there's no issue.
There's no issue. But once that PO exists in Northern Ireland, other members can join it from England. So
or Scotland or Wales.
So the original sum of the parts that is where you set up originally is based on those two, with a choice of the department to accept English ones or not. But in later years, if it was a Northern Ireland PO and there isn't any funding for this in England, and that's been certainly the clear to the committee from the two POs that are currently based in, have their head office in England, that there's no scheme there, you might see them migrating here. And we could do nothing with that without the discretion.
To go back to my original question, DERA and DEFRA, I know the legislation is there and you just explained that, but DERA and DEFRA still reserve the right to refuse.
We have, well, it depends. Under the current rules, there would be an element of discretion where a PO asks to transfer its head office to Northern Ireland from England. There's an element of discretion there. But it has never been tested because this legislation was brought over from the EU And basically we substituted constituent nation for member state. So it's never been tested. So, yes, in theory, DEFRA would have to say to our minister, do you consent to accepting this PO? And I think our minister would be reluctant to do that, where most of the turnover is generated in England and most of the players are English.
And that would mean the Northern Ireland growers there wouldn't be able to avail of the scheme, because they'd still be in England where there's no scheme.
NI growers would not be able to avail of that scheme.
Yes, because they're still part of PO in England.
Yes, no, that's okay.
I don't think that, which it is discretion, is of any value to stakeholders. Insofar as the minister, I probably would rightly say, no, we can't afford that. But there's no scope for them to get funded then, which is not the aim of what we're trying to do.
I'm trying to just put each of the jigsaw pieces together in my own head, because this has been an issue that the department has consistently raised with us over the last number of weeks, in terms of the fact that, folks, this could be a serious issue for us into the future, where a PO can come over and set up. So essentially what you're laying out now is that the final decision would rest with the minister, possibly on financial grounds, whether to accept a new PO here.
If we're using the current legislation, yes, the minister DEFRA could say, can this PO transfer under the existing rules to Northern Ireland? And I think the minister would be reluctant to do that. But we cannot say, because that hasn't actually been tested, we cannot say for certainty if that is something that he definitely will be able to sustain.
And I say it means that
the bill makes it clearer.
But as I say, like the two bits are, if he said no and the Northern Ireland growers decided to set up an PO in order to avail of the funding and moved over, the other ones could follow.
Yeah.
As the law is currently written. So it's at that point of setting up and the point of later on, we'll assume that this will be around for a while yet.
And there is nothing in the existing rules where we can say, no, you cannot have additional members transferring into the PO.
Okay.
Okay, Patty?
I'm intrigued by where this discussion's going. We're discussing what might happen in a hypothetical situation, which may or may not happen under circumstances where we might or might not need to close a situation off, in a situation where we have discretionary powers to the minister to do so, where the debate all started on discretionary powers. So I find this is a bit of a nebulous, nefarious sort of way over there, whenever we probably have much more important things to be discussing.
Well, if I can say, this is potentially a real issue. If the POs come looking for funding here, and we have to say no to Northern Ireland growers because
here's a question for you: if that is potentially a difficult situation, where are your proposals to close it off?
By
legislative proposals to close it off.
Well,
in the hypothetical,
we have the bill. The second part of the bill.
John, where are your
the second part of the bill gives enabling powers. And one of the things that we would try and do is make sure that the funds that come from Northern Ireland will only fund. That's it. That's the enabling powers.
That is such an absolute priority for you. Where's your legislative proposal to close it off? Because up until now, I've heard hypothesis after hypothesis about what might happen.
I'd be fairly confident that if there is the time to make legislation that we could bring back to the Assembly that would make this very clear, that the fruit and veg aid scheme, Northern Ireland, is for Northern Ireland beneficiaries only. Okay. That will come to the Assembly before the operational programmes are due. But we're running late on that time to be able to do that within this.
That's grand. We'll overcome that whenever the legislative proposals come.
But in the meantime, those risks are still there.
And the
timeline is quite tight, because the operational programmes are due to be submitted by the 15th of September 2025.
Yep.
So it's not something that's far off, it is something that is this year.
No, get all that. So if that's the issue, deal with it legislatively.
But we need these powers.
We need these powers to do that.
I know you need the powers to deal with it, but we also need the proposals to deal with that too, which you haven't had sight of. So, anyway, enough of the hypothesis.
John?
No, there's nothing left to say.
Is that it? Is everybody content now? That
if I could leave with one
yes.
one point, and I think I think they're all very reasonable comments. The only thing I turned this around myself last night and thought to myself, if the Minister came to the committee with an capped, or at least ineffectively capped scheme for a sector, I'm just not sure he would get a good hearing. Yeah. And that's again the risk of the aside from the English PO bit, which I do think is very important. That you know, if the minister said, well, it'll be what it'll be. If we get lots of people asking for it, it'll bust the bank. So be it. I just think certainly members would have to look very carefully and say, well, that's no way to manage a budget.
No. Anya, little one.
A very, very little one, just in relation to how these discretionary powers may be used. And I know you'd mentioned earlier on in a response to, I think it was John, and I don't want to take your words, I don't want to misquote you, but did you make reference to the possibility of some financial awards under the FVAS scheme being reduced? Again, I suppose there's the question of, would there ever be a case that they actually may be increased using discretionary powers?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the first thing that sets what the amount of budget required, and I'm stepping on Elaine's toes here a bit, is what the producer organisation has in its programme. So that the first thing is, what are they going to do over the coming 3 year period? What do their members want to do? So they set that budget, and that can go up. This legislation then requires match funding that with caps of 4.1% of their turnover. Step me home.
No, yeah, right.
So the anticipation is that it could well go up. There is scope, and I appreciate it's hypothetical, to increase budget for certain parts. You will have heard the stakeholders talk about more money being available for research and environmental. So not necessarily increasing the whole budget, but allowing them to only have to pay 20% and the fund pay up to 80% for environmental works. We could rightly see that might be something that the department would consult stakeholders with in the near future. So yeah, it definitely go up. The point is that if it goes up because you get 2 more POs, 3 more POs, you get other sectors coming on board, but bigger POs, then there currently would be no control on that budget.
So could you quantify the possibility of how many POs could come in at all and register here? And I know it would be difficult to do, but is there any quantification at all?
Well, I think
the
Minister did answer an AQ on this before, and what he said was, you know, at the moment we think there's a fair chance, again subject to what POs decide to do, that there would be 2 new POs who are currently headquartered in England and would move their head office here, but there could be others.
Again,
it's quite difficult to predict exactly what people will do in the short term, and these are discussions that we have with DEFRA and RPA.
That's mushroom sector only.
That's mushroom sector.
I mean, one of the things that the committee has asked us about is why only mushrooms, and there may be things that could be done to the rules that would make it more attractive to others. There may be others that look at it in the new, you know, and think that there's things that they would want to do, and no control over that.
Very useful.
Mr. Chairman, what are the implications of Clause 1 doesn't stand part of the bill?
All those risks.
Pardon?
The risks we've just set out. The rest of the budget that we have no control over, that English members get access to. Well,
Welsh and Scottish as well.
And Scottish.
You seem to be picking on the English.
Actually, there are Welsh growers as well in POs.
I say there is the scope, I guess, under the current legislation, for the Minister to say, no, I'm not taking those because they're they may have more members here, but they've their turnover is elsewhere. But that would be to the detriment of the Northern Ireland growers, who then wouldn't get any money.
It exclude them too. Yeah.
Yes.
And that is not any intention to do so.
We have to be finished that one, isn't it? Okay, members. I think we've wrung the officials out quite well. I don't think there'll be a drop left in you. Okay, thank you. That's okay. Thank you. So, members, are you agreed that we will now commence the formal clause-by-clause consideration of the Agriculture Bill? I need an affirmative or a negative. Are we content to commence clause-by-clause? Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yes. Yep. No no's? Is that double negative? There are no no's.
No.
Okay. So, members, I'm going to read out the title and the clause before I ask the formal question on each clause. Clause 1, aid in the fruit and vegetable sector, amendment of CMO regulation. Is the committee content with clause 1 as drafted? So I've got one yes. Is there any no's? No? Okay. I'm just going to ask for a show of hands, and we can note and record based on that show of hands. So yes, voted yes. Okay, and voted no. Okay. Thank you, members. So, having decided that the committee is not content with clause 1 as drafted, I would remind members that in advance of consideration stage we have the option of registering our formal opposition to the question that clause 1 stands part of the bill. This would ensure that the clause is debated at consideration stage. Does the committee wish to table formally notice of the committee's opposition to the question that clause 1 stands part of the bill? Is there a yes from anyone? Or are we no? No? No. Okay. No is the recorded answer to that. Just to remind members that in advance of the scheduling of the bill for debate, any member can indeed register with the Business Office that they want it to stand part of the bill in terms of the methodology. Okay. Clause 2.
Can I just check with you? Next we have all that. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Clause 2, aid in the fruit and vegetable sector, part and modify. Is the committee content with clause 2 as drafted? I'll ask yes, first of all. Yes? Yes. Show of hands for yes? Mm-hmm. Okay. Unanimous, so the committee is content with clause 2. Clause 3, information provision and promotion measures, part and modify. Is the committee content with clause 3 as drafted? Again, can I ask for a show of hands for yes? Yeah. Okay. Unanimous. Okay. Clause 4, that is the regulations. Is the committee content with clause 4 as drafted? Again, can I ask for a show of hands and for the yes vote, first of all? Yeah. Okay. Unanimous. Thank you. Clause 5 is the interpretation. Is the committee content with clause 5 as drafted? Again, a show of hands for yes, first of all, please. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Clause 6, commencement and short title. Is the committee content with clause 6 as drafted? Yeah. Yes. Yes.
You content here?
Yes. Well, in that there was some learning in that one. I will. I'm not necessarily content with the standing orders in regard to that, but that's not the fault of the drafters of the bill. That's just the way things are, which is open to change, obviously, through a different committee. But yes, is the answer. We're content with that. Okay. Now we look at the long title. Is the committee content with the long title as drafted by the department? Yes. Yes. Content? Yes. Thank you. Members, that concludes the formal clause by clause, and this will be added to the draft committee report. Members, we've received, and it's in your packet, first version of the draft committee bill report from the clerk. So leaving aside the addition of the formal clause by clause that we have just completed, we're not going to run through the rest of it today because there are a series of amendments that need to be made to it, but time is tight. So what I'm going to ask is that it will be redrafted with the changes and amendments added to that. It will be then furnished to you, and we can return to that on the 22nd, but it needs to be agreed on the 22nd. So what it would need is confirmation that when you receive it, if you are not content with something in it, that you liaise with the clerk's office to ensure that on the day, on the 22nd, we're not wasting time and peddling around things that only occur to us. So we will have that in good time for the 22nd, members. Okay, are members content with that? Okay, thank you, members. Thank you, John. Thanks, Elaine. Okay, now we are going to move to agenda item 9, which is the Environmental Protection Disposal of Polychlorinated Biphenyls and Other Dangerous Substance Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2025. We refer members to pages 219 to 244 of the pack. Members of the Department proposes to make the above-named statutory rule for the implementation of amendments to the Environmental Protection Regulations 2000 to enable NI to comply with the Stockholm Convention and ongoing alignment with the EU Persistent Organic Pollution, or POPs, legislation as required under the Windsor Framework. The SR will be led before the Assembly under the draft affirmative procedure. Before they come in, guys, we are really tight for time. We have a hard stop shortly after 1:30, so slightly just need to be pointed and on detail with this part, if that's okay. Good morning. Good afternoon.
It's afternoon now, isn't it?
It was obviously morning when you arrived. Can I just offer my apologies on behalf of the committee just for the long wait. We've had a packed schedule where we're dealing with legislation, and obviously when we're dealing with legislation it gets due scrutiny and takes a full remit of our attention. But you're now here, so we have Helen Lewis, the Principal Scientific Officer of Chemical Regulations Branch in the Industrial Pollution and Radiochemical Inspectorate. We have Evine Corrigan, Deputy Principal in the Chemicals and Industrial Pollution Policy Branch, Natural Environment Policy Division. I've just mentioned to the members, by the way, we have a hard stop here. It's to do with broadcasting more than anything else, so it's not that we don't want to spend more time with you. But if you could give us your brief and your presentation, then we'll move to members' questions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Chairman and members of this committee, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today regarding amendments to the Environmental Protection, Disposal of Polychlorinated Biphenyls and Other Dangerous Substances, Northern Ireland Regulations 2000. I am Acting Deputy Principal in the Chemicals and Industrial Pollution Policy Branch, and I am joined here today by my colleague Helen Lewis, Principal Scientific Officer of the Chemicals Regulation Branch in NIEA. Helen and I work collaboratively to deliver regulations on polychlorinated biphenyls, also known as PCBs, with Helen's team responsible for compliance monitoring when the amendments come into force. The amendments will require all equipment containing PCBs above the new lower threshold concentration of 0.005% PCBs by weight and a volume of 0.05 decimeters cubed to be removed from use by the end of 2025 and ensure environmentally sound waste management thereafter. This is a requirement of the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants, of which the EU and UK are both signatories, and where this amendment comes from. PCBs fall into the category of persistent organic pollutants, also known as POPs. Parties of the Stockholm Convention are committed to removing PCBs from production and use. The use of PCBs has been regulated in the UK since the early 1980s, but some PCBs still exist in use, predominantly within the high voltage transformer equipment in energy infrastructure. In Northern Ireland, the main stock of equipment still containing PCBs is held by Northern Ireland Electricity Networks and is equipment brought into use before 1987. Oils containing PCBs can leak from transformer equipment and enter the environment, where they can cause serious health effects in humans and animals. PCBs can have adverse effects on the immune system, liver, skin, reproductive system, gastrointestinal tract and thyroid glands. PCBs remain common contaminants of animal and human food chains, generally at low concentrations, and diet remains one of the main sources of exposure in the general population. A regulatory impact assessment was carried out by the Department in order to assess the impact to Northern Ireland Electricity Networks, who are identified as the biggest holder of stock containing PCBs in Northern Ireland. The number of other holders was considered to be statistically insignificant and so were excluded from the assessment. PCB contaminated equipment will have to be replaced at the end of its useful life. However, the amendments bring forward the replacement date of some of NIE Network's equipment that would have had to have been replaced eventually. The assessment indicated that a central cost of £385,685 would be incurred by NIE networks to meet the requirements of the amendments. The cost incurred by NIE networks is due to the decommissioning of contaminated equipment before the end of its useful life. While there is a cost, it is considered by DERA officials to be acceptable to achieve the safe destruction of this equipment. A consultation exercise was carried out by the Department, which ran between the 23rd of May and the 22nd of July 2022. DERA engaged with approximately 60 targeted NI stakeholders, including small and medium-sized companies and public bodies, via a short survey which ran for 9 weeks. A total of 7 responses were received from businesses and public sector organisations. None of the responses expressed any serious misgivings about the proposed amendments. The amendments have already been laid in England and Wales in July 2020 and in Scotland in February 2021. It came into force in the Republic of Ireland in 2020. Northern Ireland continues to follow EU chemicals legislation as required under Annex 2 of the Windsor Framework, and both the EU and UK are party to the Stockholm Convention. Therefore, these amendments will bring Northern Ireland into line with both Great Britain and the EU. By not laying these amendments, we will be in breach of the Windsor Framework and will remain divergent with both GB and the EU, as well as being in breach of the Stockholm Convention. This incurs the risk of EU infraction to NI government. Minister Muir issued an executive paper on the 5th of March 2025 regarding these amendments. He received replies from the Justice Minister, Health Minister and Economy Minister, none of whom had any issues with the amendments and were in support of them. The amendments were approved by the Executive at a meeting on the 30th of April 2025. I will now pass over to my colleague Helen, who will discuss the regulatory aspects of these amendments.
Thank you, Aoibhinn. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Committee. Good afternoon, rather than good morning. I lead the Chemicals Compliance Team in the Industrial Pollution and Radiochemical Inspectorate in NIA. Over the past 4 years, my team has been working collaboratively with Aoibhinn's policy team to ensure NIA is ready to implement and enforce these regulations when the amendments come into force. One of the key elements is for holders of PCB contaminated equipment to register their pieces of equipment with NIEA. To make this easier for customers, we have engaged with Digital Services in DERA to develop an online registration system that will go live shortly after the amendment comes into force. The amendment will also provide NIA with the legislative powers to take action where this registration duty is not complied with. Any action undertaken will be in accordance with the DERA enforcement and prosecution policy, and our enforcement tools range from warning letters up to formal prosecution through the courts. The cost for registration has not increased from those laid out in the original 2000 legislation, mainly due to the efficiency savings of having an online registration system. We will also be able to check for PCB contaminated equipment during inspections for other regulatory regimes, and we'll take that opportunity to do so. The charges will remain at an annual charge of £155 for holders of fewer than 20 pieces of equipment and £250 for holders of more than 20 pieces of equipment. The registration system will facilitate NIA engagement with registered holders and will also enable holders to notify NIA when the PCB contaminated equipment has been disposed of and can be removed from the register. My team works collaboratively with the waste teams in the regulation unit, and we will be ensuring that the destruction of this material is undertaken by appropriate means. My team has also been engaging with other regulators in the UK, and we have held discussions with Northern Ireland Electricity Networks, which is the largest holder in Northern Ireland of potentially PCB contaminated equipment. In conclusion, we would like to thank you for your attention and to say that Aoibhinn and I are happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. I have just 2 brief questions, if that's okay. So in the paper that you'd submitted, there was only a small amount of responses to the consultation with no significant matters identified. I'm always curious when people use those words. In terms of the minor ones, I suspect there were some minor matters brought up, what would a minor concern be to a consultee as part of that consultation?
Whenever the consultation was sent out, there wasn't any concerns regarding. So we didn't actually have a negative concern regarding the amendments. They were quite supportive of the fact, given the impact that they can have on human and animal health, for them to be removed. This is also an amendment to existing legislation. So the fact that PCBs are monitored as closely as they are by Helen's team, this is something that's very familiar to the stakeholders that we would have engaged with. So it's something that they're used to being monitored on.
Yeah, the regulations have also been widely publicised across the UK, with obviously England, Wales and Scotland going first, Republic of Ireland also going first. PCBs are known to be really nasty chemicals listed on the Stockholm Convention. So I think most businesses have electricity supply through Northern Ireland Electricity as well. We're well engaged with Northern Ireland Electricity.
And that part of the paper then, the cost to NIE, for instance, £385,685. I know Dara have said that didn't constitute a considerable cost, but I take it, were NIE moving in that direction anyway, or is that additional cost being will it be as a consequence of the amendment? Yeah,
that will be, so the equipment that contains PCBs, it will come to the end of its natural life. Approximately 60 years is how long the equipment, it depends on the manufacturing. So that's the cost of essentially decommissioned equipment that would have still been in use, but it's now being taken out of use early, and that's where that cost comes from. It was considered that was a reasonable cost on the polluter pays principle through the economist that did the regulatory impact assessment.
And I take it that NIE are aware of that, it's been communicated and it'll be done. Okay, and actioned and then reported on?
Yeah, so certainly at a UK level, Northern Ireland Electricity attend an Energy Networks Association meeting, and so do we. So, and that's been going on for 3 or 4 years. So, we're in good communication with Northern Ireland Electricity on this.
Members, any other questions? Content? One, Michelle?
One, please. Yep. Can I just clarify that all elements of the draft rules stem from the Stockholm Convention, and that they are also replicated by GB? There's no deviation from that. It's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same. Yes, we're just later in laying ours due to retained EU law and different things, staffing pressures. But yeah, they'll bring us exactly in line with the rest of GB.
Okay, that's grand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, guys. So, members, as the procedures draft affirmative, a final draft SR will come before us in due course, and there will then be the debate in plenary. Are members content? Yep. Okay, thank you, members. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 10, members, is the Farming with Nature Regulations in Northern Ireland 2025. We received a briefing on this SR at our meeting on the 10th of April, where we heard that DAERA intends to make a statutory rule to introduce the Farming with Nature Regulations Northern Ireland 2025 to provide DAERA with the legal powers to implement the Farming with Nature package as part of the continued rollout of the Sustainable Agriculture Programme. Members, as you will recall, following the briefing we requested further clarification on a number of matters, and we considered the Department's response at our meeting last week. So, yeah. My apologies for making you wait, but we had some important legislation to attend to. So I'm going to welcome the following officials to the meeting. That is Sita Hale, Deputy Director of Agriculture Policy, and Davina Park, Head of Farming with Nature Transition Policy Branch. I'm just going to ask, are there any opening remarks that you would like to make on the draft SR? Before we start, and just to say we're time constrained.
Okay, just to keep it short, you've already considered the SR, the original SR, and then it was shared with the examiner statutory rules, and she had a few minor comments on the SR, and on the back of the comments that she made, we redrafted it, and we relayed it, and that should be the copy that you have in front of you. I can run through the amendments, but they are really very much technical typos and just really tightens up the SR a lot more and makes it more readable and understandable. So,
thank you for that. Members, have members any other questions in regard to what is we've got in our packs, and any questions or any confirmation or clarification that you would seek on this matter. Okay. Okay, members, as the procedure is draft affirmative, there will be a debate in plenary. So are you content that the committee supports the SR as drafted in the debate pending the SR report, which will be available shortly?
Yep.
Yep. Content. You'll never get a shorter witness session than that. I heard the minister said you could take the rest of the day off.
That's great.
Didn't get it in writing now. But,
Maybe you weren't on earlier.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience. Okay, members, now moving on to the next three agenda items. The Department has issued us with 3 written briefings this week, which are tabled papers. Agenda items 11, Inland Fisheries Annual Report. Agenda item 12, Proposed Consultation and Policies for Inclusion in the Fisheries Bill. And agenda item 13, which is an update on the outcome of the consultation and a proposed UK-wide fairer food labelling scheme. We had previously not to take items for main agenda and table papers. However, due to the public holiday on Monday and the fact that we are at Balmoral next week, they were included in table papers. So members, you could read those at your leisure, and all the matters covered will be back before the committee again. So unless any members have any specific comments on any of the written briefings, can I ask to get agreement to note these briefings at this point? If anything occurs to you on any of them, please advise the clerk and we will bring them up at a future meeting. Members content with that? Thank you, members. And, okay. Agenda item 15 is correspondence. 14, sorry. Okay, the fair farm price briefing from Assembly Legal Services. Members, due to the volume of business today, including the SR postponed from last week, this item is postponed until the 22nd of May. The relevant papers that are in your pack today at pages 234 to 268 of the pack will be reissued for that session. Are members content?
Yeah.
Thank you, members. Agenda item 15 is correspondence. Referred to the member from the Clerk to the Committee for Finance, page 270 271 of the pack, regarding analysis of the 24-25 outturn and forecast outturn. The March R12 position starts at page 272 of the pack. Members, the DOF has also commissioned the 24-25 provisional outturn exercise with the Department returns providing provisional outturn figure work and explanation of any overspends, underspends due by the 14th of May. Have any comments to make? You content to note. Thank you, members. Next item, I refer to page 318, 319 of the pack for email correspondence from an individual dated the 1st of May regarding a potential solution for Loch Ness using AD. Members, do you have any comments, or are you content to forward to DAERA with the individual's permission? As we agreed some considerable time ago, we didn't have the expertise to evaluate such proposed solutions, and it would be better considered by the scientists attached to DAERA. Members content? Yeah. Thank you. I refer to page 38, report of the Examiner Statute Rule 320 to 327 of the pack. Of relevance to this committee is SR 2547, the direct payments to farmers cost compliance revocation regulations Northern Ireland 2025, which has not been drawn to special attention of the Assembly. You content to note the report? Thank you, members. I refer to page 191 of the table papers to an invitation to the rescheduled LCJ lecture on sentencing practice in Northern Ireland at 6 p.m. on Tuesday the 20th of May in Ulster University. You content to note? Okay, members. I refer to the memo dated 6th of May from the clerk to the Committee for Infrastructure at page 192 of the table papers regarding A5 Western Transport Corridor, the qualification requirements for land agents. The Committee for Infrastructure inquired if there are any minimum qualification requirements for land agents. The response from DFI states the responsibility of appointing a suitably qualified land agent is a matter for the landowner themselves. Land and Property Services, who act on behalf of DFI, have no input into assessing if agents are suitably qualified. The committee also contacted the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, requesting information regarding qualifications required, and the response is enclosed. Are you content to note? Any comments to make? Content to note, thank you. Agenda item 16 is the forward work plan. Members, the draft itinerary for the visit to County. Sorry, Michelle, did you want to come in there?
It was just, you continue on that. Just,
forward work
just
plan?
in relation to what for.
Okay. Forward work plan. Members, the draft itinerary for the visit to County Fermanagh on the 11th 12th of June can be found pages 329 to 330 of the pack. Are members content with the proposed itinerary? And if so, the committee team will continue to plan accordingly. Yep. You want to come in here? Yep.
Yeah, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
It was just really on the back because we kind of rushed on after the NAP presentation as to what the committee's actions would be after this, because I am conscious that there is obviously a consultation ongoing, but it wouldn't be unusual for a committee then to do a piece of work in parallel with that, and I am conscious that this is quite an extensive piece of work. It's also a very complex piece of work, and whether or not it would be possible for us to maybe to start to schedule some presentations in from various groups who will be impacted on it. farm organisations, processors and so on, just for the committee to have a clearer view in anticipation of any legislation coming forward, so at least then that we're adequately informed.
So we could look at the forward work diary and see what I think it's important. I think given that it's going to require executive approval as well, as much information and confidence is going to be required in it. John, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, Chair, can we agree as well now, and probably because of the 8-week consultation, it's timely that we do, that there be an even balance between the representative groups in terms of sectoral and environmental?
Yeah, no issue with that, yeah. No issue with that, yeah.
Yes, raised to
identify. So I suspect that the department will have its own group of stakeholders. We're not confined or designed to that, but I think that'll be a useful starting point. But I think, yes, if we ask Raise even to draws up a list of potential consultees for us to invite, if we're content with that. And any members can throw in to ensure that
we'll have a balance.
Get a balance.
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely content, yeah. Okay, thank you, members. Draft forward work programme can be found table papers at 219. Do you agree that the forward work plan is published? Thank you, members. Any other items of business? Okay, you've been excellent today. Thank you so much for every bit of help you've given me today. Agenda item 18, date and time of next meeting is Thursday the 15th at the Balmoral Show. Please don't leave the meeting without collecting your ticket. Okay? And the Assembly Marquee is at B44 to 45. We'll be aiming to start the meeting at our usual time of 10 a.m. Okay, thank you, members.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.